Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's performance will include first century Twilight fanfiction, classic medieval hijinks, and an orphan mouse rat singing for coin. All this and more on an unnecessarily deep dive into fake saints here on Created Things. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Created Things, a podcast of Catholic creatives, and the only podcast hosted by the very patron saints of all things fake themselves. I'm counselor, artist, Jacob Flores Popcheck. With me, my good and excellent buddy, Father Gabriel Toretta, OP. How you doing today, Padre?
You know, I'm feeling the fakest. You know, I'm just feeling the fakest
Girl,
I've ever felt.
You're so fake. You are so basic and fake.
Thank you.
What are you even doing? You're so fake. You look poor.
I do. I know. And there's reasons for this. I have no accessories. You know, I haven't even gone to prison for massive fraud. I feel like there's just a lot about my life that's fake.
Whoa. Alleged fraud.
Alleged fraud. Thank you very much.
Anna Delvey's father will give her that money soon. I promise. It's coming.
It's coming any day. This is a very 21st century, like waiting for Godot, you know, like Anna Delvey's father is bringing the money, just waiting for Godot. We're just waiting for it.
Anna Delvey's father is my reinterpretation. I like that we're opening with this because, you know, we're talking about fraudsters. We're talking about fakes. And I've been really excited for this episode because we're gonna be talking about fake saints.
Fake saints.
Specifically, what I wanted to do, where, you know, neither you nor I are sports people by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, it's March Madness. People will do these brackets, right? Where they, you know, pit their kind of ideal players against each other and things. And I thought, what's our equivalent of doing this? And I've wanted to do an episode on just the sort of cultural phenomenon of totally invented, fabricated, completely made up saints for a really long time. And I just thought, how freaking fun would it be to each just choose 4 fake saints and pit them against each other? I thought that would be a lot of fun. But in order to do that, in order to successfully compete those saints against each other, those fake saints against each other, we need someone to be a judge of sorts. We need to pitch our case to someone.
But who could we trust? Who could we trust with such an immense responsibility? Who could handle it? I mean, the power. Who wouldn't get drunk with the power? That's what I'm afraid of.
Right. Where is our Atlas who can lift the globe of this tremendous responsibility?
Exactly. And where will he trot with that globe?
Where doth he trot? And so we trotted over, after much discernment and consideration, to none other than my personal friend. If you like this podcast, it means you are familiar with and like his work because he's our producer. Please welcome to Created Things, Mr. Kyle Weinike.
Hey.
Hello, everyone.
That was I thought you were going to come in with some big characteristic.
No, I just feel misguided. I was under the assumption this episode was about sexual intercourse. But this was Created Things sex.
We did kind of lie to you to get you to say yes to this. I could see where you would have been misled, but I feel like that's not our fault because
we're gonna do sometime in July. We're not doing sex yet.
Okay, but I'll be on that one, right? Since I'm the expert. Correct?
Oh yeah, you're definitely the resident expert on sex. Everybody says that about Kyle. When they meet Kyle, they're like, "There's one thing I know about him." That guy can
probably have sex. I bet. I bet he could do it. You probably could. I don't know. Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So you guys are already getting a taste of the tone of this episode. This is going to be a very, very silly episode.
Yeah, super epic and silly and epic and funny and epic and kind of silly and epic and kind of epic. Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of poggers in general.
Yeah.
So we've Father Gabriel and I have been putting together our brackets for fake saints. Mm-hmm. Kyle, right? You do not know who any of these saints are. We've not given.
I do.
Do you?
I did research
Oh, you did research to guess what
fake saints. What are some fake saints?
I actually edited the Wikipedia, so I put some. These actually were real saints at one point, but they aren't anymore because of what I did to the Wikipedia. Yeah.
This is what I said. This is what I mean about getting drunk on power. Listen to this. Like, you haven't even been on the episode yet, and already you're like changing history here. Like, this is, I don't know. This is dangerous. This is dangerous.
But such a Zoomer flex. Kyle Weinike is a Zoomer. And that's such a Zoomer flex to put out there, to just change history for his own selfish ends.
Respect.
No, it's just it's just for to be funny.
That's the same thing.
No, not at all.
Father Gabriel, before we jump into our brackets, I want to sort of gear this up for people because I think most people maybe aren't even consciously aware of like fake saints as being a cultural motif. Could you line this up or kind of help us dive into this a little bit?
Yeah. Well, let me propose one thing for depending on where somebody might be coming from listening to this. One, let me propose to you that there are real saints. So the idea of a real saint is that it's somebody who has lived a life that's so given to God, so full of desire for God, so full of God's grace, so much like transformed by who Jesus Christ is and the love that he has for for everybody and for that person in particular, that they allow themselves to be totally purified by God. And to already kind of on the earth live a real shadow of how we get to live, how we live in heaven, you know. Sometimes that's kind of comes at the end of one's life with like a radical conversion. Oftentimes it's something that you see building over that. Usually it's something that you see kind of building over the course of somebody's life. We believe these are real, you know, that these are real people like you and me, and that this is in fact like it's not some weird thing for some strange psycho people, but it's actually a call that's given to everybody to live so much in the love of God, to live so much with our lives shaped by the desire for him that we could, any one of us, actually be a saint. Okay. Now, that being said, saints also, you know, because we believe like this whole thing about them being real people, that they have real relationships of love, like we have real relationships of love, because guess what? They're people like us. And so there's these things about, well, they're so full of love for God and they're in heaven with God right now. And so we pray to them. Like we form relationships of love with them and we pray to them. We ask their intercession for things and you form a relationship of love, you know? Okay. Now that's sort of one very small presentation of what we mean by talking about the saints in Christian perspective. But, one might be able to predict pretty rapidly that then you would also, in addition to like the real saints, the people who are like really in heaven, you would have like people who are allegedly fake saints, and also maybe people who are really fake saints. You know, there's all kinds of reasons why you might want to propose somebody as a saint who never was canonized, either because you're telling a funny story and just making somebody up, or you're you're writing just a complete work of fiction and you just make up somebody's name, or maybe you have reasons of your own why you want to say, for instance, like, got to claim that my family had some important saint in the background that I don't really, you know. The church is extremely guarded about declaring people saints. And it's not because we don't believe that there are many, 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 many more saints than those whose names we know. It's because we believe that once the church declares somebody a saint, like formally and properly, that is that can't be wrong. That like it takes a lot of investigation because you don't want to take like say I just decide today that I have this like important saint in my ancestry and I start trying to promulgate it on the interwebs and these things and I make a bunch of YouTubes about it and they become very popular. People make the TikToks about it and it's all great and other things happen. You know, and then like 100 years later, people think, oh my gosh, but what about that saint whatever, Esteban from Father Gabriel's background? You know, the church like investigates and it's like, no, this is actually garbage, you know, whatever. So just to say, like, saints real and fake all come from the same reality, that this is actually like a call universally given to human beings, and as the way that human beings do things, some people want to do things earnestly and really like let their lives be transformed by God, and some people really want to fake it, either about themselves or about other people.
Well, but then there's this third layer, I think, which is what kind of interested me about the topic and made me want to do the episode, which is just when genuine saint devotion or genuine appreciation for these real saints is so proliferated throughout a culture that people end up creating sort of Paul Bunyan type saints, where it's like, it's not even imagining that a real person was a saint and they aren't. It's not saying like, oh, I'm related to a saint. It's literally inventing up the existence of a person from whole cloth and giving them kind of a saint identity. So there are these folkloric figures that people are often aware of as being completely fake, and they're just kind of silly. And what I love about those is there's sort of like a pH strip for how the culture, the given culture where this fake saint is popularized, feels about Catholicism and spirituality and Christ kind of in general. And so I really like that as a metric. And I don't know what saints you chose. We haven't talked about this in advance, but I will say all 4 of my saints are very explicitly made up people from whole cloth. They absolutely do not exist. No one makes any pretense of them existing, and are exclusively sort of these interesting reflections of how people feel about saints, and then by extension, the Christian faith. But I think that's kind of an interesting thing too, that like once we adopt this religion and saint devotion becomes so proliferated, then we go, okay, what can we do with this that's silly? Like just for fun, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, thanks for pointing that out, because like there's just endlessly these presentations in like popular media, especially like TV and movies and stuff, but also in like, you know, whatever random books and stuff of like Christianity is this kind of like dour, tragic, like bitter religion of like, you know, people who are sad and angry all the time. But like in fact,
and don't get me wrong, we are sad and angry all the time, but not because.
Well, I mean, can I be angry and happy all the time? I feel like if that's an option, I am that option.
Two things can be true.
Thank you. Yeah. But because Christianity is this religion of love, of loving God and being loved by Him, it in fact does tend to take these profoundly silly directions in the way that you move in profoundly silly ways with things that you love the very most, you know? So like something that comes to mind right away is like, why does like literally every parent develop some kind of like insane joke language or kind of talk with the specific to their children, you know? Well, it's just because they just like love this son or daughter so much, and then they're just gonna like be kind of crazy and like, yeah.
So Kyle, we're going to jump into our bracket soon because we got a lot of fake saints to cover in a very short amount of time. But before we do that, I mean, what do you think of this as we're lining it up for you? What do you think of this idea of just like sort of totally silly fake saints made up from whole cloth? Do you have any questions before we get started? Do you have any hot takes before we get started? What's going through your head as we kind of put this down?
Nothing.
You're just totally numb.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
but I have my sheet ready.
Oh, that's good, because you can't have a Final Four unless you have a bracket sheet. You know, it's critical. Like,
do I actually need a bracket sheet because I don't have one?
Well, you just draw it with some lines. No. As long as you got paper, then you got some lines, and then you've done it.
No, let me talk you through how this works. Don't worry about it. We're gonna talk you through how this works, and we're talking to the listener through how this works. So we're gonna take turns. Father Gabriel is gonna say, "Here is my first fake saint," and I'm gonna respond with a fake saint of my own. And then you're going to choose which of those is the best of those two. And he's going to then move on to round 2. Then we're going to go to the next 2 saints. You're going to choose one. Next 2 saints, you're going to choose one. Next 2 saints, you're going to choose one. You will choose one from each of those categories. That'll leave us with a final 4. And then we'll decide together which of those final 4 is the best one.
Interesting. Well, you guys keep track of that. I'm just here to look cool and pretty.
Okay. Yeah, right. Actually, that is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Drunk on power, cool and pretty. That's yeah. That's right. That's how it goes.
But I will want your hot takes on this, right? Because we're going to be pitching some very weird people to you. And I want your thoughts on this, all right?
Yeah, I guess.
What's going on, buddy? Why are you so sad?
Nothing. Nothing's going on.
Christianity, sad and angry.
My Lent is to be sad. I'm giving up happiness this Lent. Yeah, so.
Well, I happen to have a fake saint that pretty much did just that.
Okay, perfect. Maybe that saint is real. Maybe this is lining up towards I did make these up, actually. What if I'm just gonna shut up. Yeah, it sounds good. Epic. I'm so excited. Yeah, this is gonna be awesome, guys. I can't wait. Let's get into this right now.
Yeah, after the break. See, guys, this is why we normally keep Kyle behind the tech, but we decided to make the terrible mistake of bringing him on this time, and you guys get to watch the dumpster fire. So, Father Gabriel, without further ado, drum roll. Let's
my first one?
First fake saint, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got it. Okay. So my very first we're going to go with is a classy dame named Saint Thecla, Thecla. She has a book written about her called The Acts of Paul and Thecla. Well, it's about both Paul and Thecla. Guess what? Story goes like this. So Saint Paul, that Saint Paul, like from the Bible,
who we do believe is a real saint.
Who is a real saint, P.S. And we know a lot of things that Paul did, but we don't know everything that he did. And everyone loves Paul. So there is this story in the Acts of Paul and Thecla that this is how it goes, that Paul is preaching, as he's wont to do, in somebody's house, this house of this guy named Onesiphorus. And he's preaching about the Beatitudes, and there's this young virgin who's of noble birth, whose name is Thecla, and she's
if you guys are watching the YouTube version, Kyle just raised his eyebrows in a sexy way when you said young virgin. So
that's you know how it is.
Wait, how young are we talking?
It's legal. She's affianced, but of course this is a long time back, so that's pretty young. So right. Watch out.
I rescind the eyebrows.
It's good. Okay, please. Good. Appropriately lowered eyebrows. So Thecla listens really passionately to what Paul is saying, and immediately decides, she spends like 3 days in meditation, and then she decides she's going to vow herself to virginity because she wants to follow Paul and just like hear his preaching and be devoted to him and do all of these things. Problem is, she's got a fiance, and her fiance is like, OMG, I think my fiance just like vowed virginity to go wander around with Paul. ! Bad, So he does what most fiancés would do in that kind of a situation, and he tries to kill her.
Oh, sure.
Which That's is, what happens.
Yeah.
And she miraculously survives it. And then she like follows Paul around on his travels, and kind of like everywhere that they go, somebody tries to like sidle up to that sweet lady and break her vow of virginity, and then tries to kill her when it doesn't work. And every time that this happens, she miraculously is saved. Like she's in a bonfire and it doesn't burn her. Like, I mean, this level is miraculously saved.
It sounds like an episode of Dora the Explorer.
There kind of is, because it does actually travel around. So there's a lot of like, and this time I'm not dying from fire. Fuego! So there's kind of that situation going on. Okay. So this is kind of how it goes, and the story ends in different ways and some different versions. This is hugely, I cannot even tell you how beloved Thecla is, how beloved this text is. So it's called, so the Acts of Paul and Thecla are written sometime probably the late 2nd century, not quite sure. We have so many extant versions of this. This is written, don't forget, so this is like, 1800 years ago. We have so many copies of this. We have it was originally written in Greek. We have the Greek version. We have 5 separate Latin translations, 5 separate ones. We have a Syriac translation, an Armenian translation, a Slavonic translation, an Arabic translation, just in case that wasn't enough. So like everyone loves Thekla. Everyone loves this text. It's hugely a big deal. It becomes a really important part of Christian devotion. St. Gregory Nazianzus in the 4th century visits this big shrine of her in this place called Seleucia. And other people, we have other records of other famous people from the 4th century visiting this great shrine.
So people are thinking that she is real.
Yeah, no, there's a huge devotion to her. People love her, you know?
Okay.
Like the emperor in the 5th century massively rebuilds the whole thing, this whole big shrine to Thekla, because he has a vision of her. There's like all of these records of like miracles and that worked by her intercession, people having visions of her, all these kinds of things. Okay, Thekla's a big deal, you know? She kind of even becomes like a character that a person that people think with about like virginity and stuff like this. She's an important figure in Christianity, in early some branches of early Christianity. Okay. So why am I proposing her on this kind of podcast and this kind of episode rather than another kind of episode? Well, the problem with the Acts of Paul and Thekla is that we have this really clear record from this other great early church writer named Tertullian in his book on baptism, which he writes something like 190 to 200. He says that recently there was an ecclesiastical trial of a priest who was charged with, admitted to, and convicted of forging the book, which is to say writing it as a pious fiction. And they asked him like, why'd you do it, man? Why'd you do it? And he said that he did it, quote, out of love for Paul. That like he loved Paul so much and he wanted to like think about other things that Paul did because he loved Paul so much. Like obviously he was going to have this big convert, and like what if we brought in like a female lead as well to kind of counterbalance all that kind of dudeness?
So it was fan fiction. So it was literally Paul fan fiction.
They're
like this priest loves Paul. He gets on WhatsApp and he's like, I'm going to write this really cool story about Paul and his like super holy girlfriend. And then everyone decides that his fanfic is news.
This is like the biggest deal on the planet. Yeah.
This is like Twilight. This is how Twilight.
This is Twilight. No, so I actually promise you there is a lot of like serious scholarly discussion about whether we can consider.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Did Twilight come from 50 Shades of Grey, or did 50
Shades of Grey came from Twilight?
This is like 50 Shades of Grey.
Correct. Yeah.
Twilight was a sex dream that repressed Mormon Stephanie Meyer had and then turned into a children's book. 50 Shades of Grey was a fan fiction of her children's book.
Yeah, which is why they both are such great literary masterpieces. What can we say?
Okay. So this is 50 Shades of Grey Saint edition
for the Acts of the Apostles.
There is not sexual in any way.
There is a real sense in which that's true, actually, because if you think of 50 Shades of Grey as this like take the normal sense of human sexuality and then just like blow it up and make it completely insane. That is actually what the Acts of Paul and Thekla does with the normal sense of Christian abstinence, sexuality, chastity. It takes the Christian notion of chastity and then kind of blows it up and makes it really wild and crazy.
It makes it a caricature. Like if 50 Shades is a caricature of hedonism, this is a caricature of
asceticism,
religiosity, chastity.
Yeah, exactly right. Like so there are things about this text that we would not consider like kosher for like there's like the way that in which she's a virgin, like there's a lot of denial of the body and a denial of the goodness of sexuality in itself. So
really just like Twilight and 50 Shades, because it's also written by kind of a repressed Mormon.
This turns out that this presbyter was the world's first repressed Mormon. It's amazing. And to be honest, there is actually a lot of legitimate scholarly conversation about whether fan fiction is in fact the best model for thinking about these things, because it's confusing and there's reasons why people say yes and reasons why people say no, but it's a pious fiction at the very least. The funny thing about it, of course, is that like there are a lot of Christians who get named Thecla because of Saint Thecla. There's an important shrine to her. There are saints who write about her. There are people who have visions of her. There are like miracles attributed to her, which gets us into a whole world of like God will do what he wants, you know? God will give grace to people in the way that he wants to. So like this could be a conversation for another time. Because I could get too into this because it's a fascinating thing. But like,
no, but I do think have a part 2 for this episode.
Yeah,
we have to have a part 2 for. I mean, literally next year's podcast topic calendar is just gonna be part 2s of all of these episodes because we never do them justice. No, but I think just to sum that up quickly, I not to give anyone a crisis of faith, but like, you know, I do think this is a challenge to like scrupulosity. This is a challenge to black and white faith, right? Because you say, oh my gosh, this one saint was fake. What if it's all fake? And it's, what if this person was lying about the miracle?
My life is a lie!
Right. My life is a lie. Yeah. And you start unraveling the second you hear that. But what I always say is like, look, we first and foremost believe God the Father is this loving daddy, right? Abba, Father, Abba, sort of being a biblical equivalent of daddy, right? And if I'm a dad, and my kid runs in and says, oh, I can't wait for the tooth fairy to come. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for the tooth fairy to come. I'm not going to be like, the tooth fairy doesn't exist and you are evil.
That's what I'm going to do.
Well, that's because you're terrible. I'm going to leave that kid a quarter as an extension of my love for that kid in the hopes that as they grow older, right? As they grow older, they will graduate into recognizing that, hey, the tooth fairy may not be real, but the love of my father that I experienced through the tooth fairy, that was very much a real thing, right? And I think the same thing is true with, so I'm going with the definition of fake saints as sort of like obviously explicitly made of people. This is an apocryphal saint, right? A saint that people thought was real, but turns out to be not. But as far as apocryphal saints go, I really see that as a similar thing to this tooth fairy analogy where I go and I say, I believe in Saint Thecla. And then God goes, well, okay, sure. Okay, buddy. And gives us sort of that grace quarter in the hopes that we will eventually graduate from our belief in this totally apocryphal person, but then move on to the fact that, hey, like, but God actually did manifest himself to me through this dumb thing. And that I think is if you're willing to kind of come into faith as not as a religion that is a set of rules, but as fundamentally a relationship with God, it makes perfect sense that he would honor you believing in something stupid and try to manifest himself and his love for you through that stupid thing. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
This saint sucks. Next one.
Fake saint.
So I'm torn as to which saint to respond with. But I think...
my stats aren't really adding up. I'm not sure what would be best against this one in the jury.
This is a Moneyball fake saint situation. You got to pull one with the best kind of chastity punch.
Well, I'm trying to think like what would be a good response, like a good counterpoint to the saint. So I'm going to go with this one, which is actually my least favorite on this list, and I suspect that was actually your favorite on your list, Father Gabriel, Saint Thecla. So that's a good counterpoint. But also, so I'm going to frame it this way.
Also, just a side note: this saint actually was real, and I edited the Wikipedia page again.
Oh my gosh, you're so insidious. You're like the Grinch of church history. You're just slithering in and changing things, and oh man. Okay, so here's how I'm going to frame this. If Saint Thecla,
she got an L in her name, girl. Please respect her fakeness.
Thecla. Okay, I mean you're just lucky I'm not calling her Thicla. So
I mean I don't know. Maybe she was
right. 2 C's and a Q thick.
Could have been. All the dudes wanted her.
Yeah, there you go. So okay, if Thecla is a sort of this character invented out of a genuine love for Catholicism that ends up being disappointing because it actually shows some of the backwards crap in Catholicism, this character that I'm about to bring up is the exact opposite. This is invented inherently to bash Catholicism, but then the payoff is this very interesting kind of pro-Catholicism thing. And without further ado, I introduce to you guys Saint Batman.
Yes, tell me more.
So there's this comic run in the DC like alternate universe. I think it's in the Dark Multiverse series, because there's like, and I don't really read comic books outside of like when I was a kid.
This is a real comic book?
This is a real comic book. So DC in like the 90s and then into the 2000s, they realized they've kind of gotten themselves into a corner with like this very consistent mythology for each of their characters. So they start what's called the New 52, which is like 52 different universes. They start the Dark Multiverse. They start all these different things, which are basically like, here's what our superhero looks like in a parallel universe. In one of these, in the Dark Multiverse, Bruce Wayne is going along, and he has, you know how Bruce Wayne, Batman has this kind of complex relationship with some of his villains, right? Like on the one hand, he's always trying to stop Catwoman. On the other hand, he's kind of in love with Catwoman. On the one hand, he is trying to stop the Penguin. On the other hand, Penguin is always kind of his informant, right?
So he's always kind of in love with Penguin. It's just,
right.
Danny DeVito's he's a very lovable guy, you know?
Oh my God, can we have a multiverse comic of that where there's just like a Batman Penguin love affair? I would read that. That's a yaoi.
That's
just
Twilight
is
again.
Watch out. This is how 50 Shades of Grey got started. You calm down. Okay, do not touch your keyboard for the rest of the night.
Talk about Thicla, man, when it comes to Penguin. But anyway, so in this, so Batman has a long-standing villain called Asriel, which is basically sort of an amalgamation of all of the like super offensive, like kind of hack Templar things, that are out there, like whether you're playing Assassin's Creed and the Templars are all evil villains, or whether you're, a neo-Nazi and you love Templars because you assume there must be villains just like you, or whatever else. There's this sort of weird cultural fascination with like Templars as the cult that runs things behind the scenes. And this is the Gotham City answer to that. So there's this guy, Asriel, who's like a perfect mirror of Bruce Wayne, of Batman. He's also rich. He's also, sexy and raised affluent, but he gets taken to the monastery when he's a kid of Saint Dumas. Also non-real, totally made up for the comic series. Saint Dumas is, even within the comics, only a saint to his weird little cult. He was basically Rasputin within the comic world. He had sex with everybody. He was a assassin leader, everything else. And they start this order of hyper intense, self-flagellating, evil monks. And they train other assassins and control the new world order, right? So again, so far, classic anti-Catholicism, classic sort of chick tract type bullshit, right? At one point, Bruce Wayne, though, in his sort of push-pull love-hate relationship with Asriel, he gets his spine shattered, as we've seen happen in countless movies by the villain Bane. And he needs to go, get physical therapy and chill out for a while. And he goes, oh my gosh, who's going to be Batman while I'm gone? And he goes, Asriel, you're super moralistic, almost to a problematic degree, because that's the whole point of this villain, right? Is that he thinks he's another Batman. He thinks he's a hero, but he's so morally black and white, and he doesn't he doesn't have Batman's same apprehension when it comes to killing people. He's just sort of this like, yes, if you're a sinner, like I'm going to murder you kind of a thing. Right. So Batman makes the completely insane decision to give this guy the Batman name temporarily while
this literally can't go wrong. Yeah.
Right. Well, it goes very, very wrong.
What? But it literally couldn't.
He becomes a tyrannical, theocratic dictator. He burns down Gotham City and rebuilds it in his own image. He builds a giant castle wall around it because, of course, he's Catholic, so he's obsessed with Middle Ages crap. And he builds this giant medieval castle wall.
Time to hide my castle wall. Oh my gosh, embarrassing.
Yeah.
I feel very seen right now.
And does a lot of other really torturous, awful things and stuff. But here's where this becomes interesting, right? So far, this is boring. So far, this is hack. So far, this is every anti-Catholic thing you've heard. Well, Kyle, that's because you're dumb and wrong. So far, this is every anti-Catholic thing you've ever heard before. Except suddenly, the comic series takes this really weird turn where the crime that Batman sort of knew he was fighting very futilely does in fact take over the whole world, and the world descends into Mad Max style chaos.
Oh.
And the only place that's safe and successful is Gotham City because Asriel
Castle
built
walls.
these walls and erected it as this holy place. And it becomes...
He did what to that place?
And so it becomes this weird juxtaposition where, you know, if you're familiar with the comics at all, Gotham City is this absolute hellhole and the rest of the world is pretty nice. And then now it's flipped where because of Asriel, the rest of the world has descended into madness, but Gotham is this sort of one outpost of sanity and sacredness and holiness, to the degree that all the people of Gotham are so grateful to him that they unanimously name him Saint Batman and celebrate him as their kind of messiah. And I just love that it's sort of, it asks this weird question. And again, it's not a philosophy I believe, but the philosophy of the Batman universe and beyond that, kind of the DC universe in contrast with sort of a Marvel universe, is that like humans are inherently flawed and it's extremely futile to try and save the world, but we should anyway. And you know, Batman is like this one standout against everybody else's evil and even against his own evil, right? He has a lot of internal wrestling not to kill people and not to do this and not to do that. And I think it's interesting that they would sort of take this narrative of, ooh, evil Templar Catholic guy, and then turn on its head and say, okay, as much as we don't like this religious guy, if you believe that the world's as bad as we've been saying in these Gotham City comics that it is that kind of religion our only hope? And I think that's an interesting question to ask, right? I don't know. What do you guys think of what I'm putting down here?
I feel like the saint sucks and it's fake.
Wait a second. This saint is also fake. That's great.
Consistently surprised every single time we introduce saying, you're like, wait a second.
This one's fake too.
Not our real.
What
Wait, hold on. So, like, they're theorizing that if we just killed all the bad people, that the world would be okay, which is obviously flawed. So I definitely disagree with that.
Sure, as do I.
But I don't know.
I guess I just think it's because, again, I'm comparing this to Thekla, and I'm like, in my head, I'm saying, isn't this interesting? Like, they start off celebrating this person, turns out kind of spoiling the pot. But on the flip side, you have, hey, we're going to bash Catholicism. We're going to make this very sort of anti-Catholic thing. But at the end, we end up asking this existential question of like, we've sort of been through this character rejecting religion. But in the end, religion is the thing that's able to do what Batman never could, which is keep the evil of the world at bay. Again, I think the philosophy of the comics is inherently flawed, and I'm not arguing for that perspective. But I do think it's interesting that they sort of inadvertently played themselves by flipping that character and asking a very interesting question about the morality of the universe they had created.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, it's a fair point. And also, like, the funny thing about the whole Batman universe is that he does have, like, it's all predicated on insoluble moral like ethical dilemmas. You know, I mean, it's most radically, Christopher Nolan kind of most radically throws it in everybody's faces when he actually just made the second one of his Batman trilogy like a bunch of cheap philosophy 101 ethical problems. You're like, yes. You've got two trolleys. I mean, I couldn't use the trolley problem, so you've got two ferries on the river, and it's like it's so embarrassing, but
it's so hack.
That is kind of like the level of like ethical reasoning that goes on in the Batman thing, where like basically everything is these, like, there were these radical kind of like moral absolute black and whites, and you just have to do it, you know. So like they are, I don't know, like you can Batman, you do get these kind of weird inversions basically because it's a world of insoluble moral problems, like insoluble ethical problems. It just sometimes they just like narratively end up pushing through the problem and come to something that's not exactly a solution, but at least it's the end of the story. So like again, in that movie, although again, this is actually fairly consistently representation of the comics. Like he's obsessed, right? That he doesn't kill anybody. And so like there's this moment when he could have killed the Joker, but he doesn't want to because he doesn't kill people, and okay, fine. And like, that's just, he's, and the fact that he doesn't kill people means that just doesn't kill the Joker, even though he could have, means that the Joker then goes out and kills like thousands of people over the course of like the next couple of days. And that's also, but we buy this kind of, I mean, the movie asks us to buy this, that like, this was worth it. You know, it's the trolley problem. Like, you can't kill anybody no matter what. Unless in the final scene of the movie, it turns out that you can totally 100% kill somebody with no moral problem when he just straight up murders Two-Face, as long as you haven't thought about it beforehand. So he just kills Two-Face like that.
Does he?
Yeah, he jumps on him and he kills him. Yeah.
In the Dark Knight.
Yeah. He like knocks him off something and he dies. But again, the point was it was not premeditated.
I mean, they sort of phrase it as like, oh, it was an accident.
Oh, it was an accident. Oh, I accidentally just straight up killed you, which he does.
Whoops, I accidentally shot you with my gun.
Which was such an accident, you know? So you kind of get this. This is a funny thing with the Saint Batman, where it's like, you sort of know that you're like, okay, well, we know that like killing people who are bad just because they're bad is bad, and like setting up a theocracy with a bunch of with an actual castle wall around it seems like it's probably bad. But then also, what if everything else is so bad that the only way that things could be good is for them to be bad in this particular way?
It's very topsy-turvy.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes sense. I mean, that's yeah.
In a weird way. All right, Kyle, it's down to you, buddy. Here are your first two fake saints. You got to choose one to move on to the next category.
Batman.
Yeah?
Batman. Yeah. Is Robert Pattinson. So sexy in
this
that
is
movie.
a whole Twilight themed episode. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. God, is this secretly a Twilight? Also, you didn't even, it's Robert Pattinson.
That's what I said.
You said Patterson.
Yeah, Patterson.
That's
his
you're
name.
gaslighting me. You're gaslighting me. You're a gaslighter. Canceled. Hashtag canceled. Hashtag Kylo's over party.
I think because of the Twilight, I mean, if anything connects. I mean, that story was basically Twilight. Saint Thick. But,
it really was.
Yeah. I think just having Robert Pattinson in the Batman.
Robert
Parkinson's. Mr. Parkinson's.
I think having him, I think Batman. That's all I got. Batman wins. He's cool.
All right.
Well, Batman advances.
Yeah.
Batman advances to round 2.
Yeah.
All right, Father Gabriel, what's your next favorite saint in your personal Final Four? Let's do it.
Okay. Here's my next saint. My next saint is called Saint Nemo. You might know him from Finding Nemo. No, wait, that's a different Nemo. But spelled the same way, Saint Nemo. The idea
gonna make a saint for
everything.
Disney
for everything. Yes. So the Saint Nemo is this really important saint. Unlike many saints, he's talked about not just in like later writings, you know, like medieval writings or whatever, but he's also talked about like all through the Bible in this way that was like really incredibly striking.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So
Why have I never ever heard of this?
Well, he's all through the Bible, so it's your problem. So like, let me give you
the Bible.
Yeah,
yeah. I know we're Catholic, but you can still read the Bible. Okay,
get that corn out of my face.
So I'm just gonna read to you real briefly, or I'm gonna paraphrase some things for you from an important 13th century life of Saint Nemo, which is of course written in Latin. So I'm gonna half translate it for you. So there's this passage about Saint Nemo from 2 Timothy 2:4, which it says that Nemo fights for God, which is, you know, so it says he's very strong, that he's sort of mighty. Then the medieval author points out that he says, secondly, I say that this Nemo was great in power. And the example he gives is from the book of Revelation, which says God closes and Nemo opens. Which is kind of a big deal. Like if, you know, like Nemo sharing that much in God's life that, like, you know, God closes a door and Nemo is the one who opens it. And it says, also says in the book of Job, you know, that like, if God destroys, then it's Nemo who builds back up, which is, you know, all that's, again, pretty surprising. There's actually a lot of references to Nemo in the book of Job. And then there's this important passage as well from the book of Job that says that we kind of understand how Nemo ended his life. So we know that he ended his life as a saint. So it says Nemo ascended into heaven.
We both thought you meant that he killed himself.
He was talking about killing himself for a
Just,
while.
you were like,
Okay,
and then there's a story how
okay.
Nemo ended his life. And I'm
And
like,
Nemo
oh my
ended his
God.
life. Okay. Listen.
We both kind of
Sometimes people just
what?
die, actually.
Yeah.
So it says like, so you know, so he when he died, that Nemo ascended into heaven. And then the story, you know, this narrative of the life of Saint Nemo says, and there may we also ascend, and be with God, 3 in 1. Amen. You know, so Saint Nemo is kind of a big deal, you know, and this is the whole claim, is that Saint Nemo is really
Like a nondescript warrior saint.
Yeah, but described everywhere, and is weird, like described in the Old Testament and described in the New Testament. It kind of has these consistent characteristics. So we know the specific time that somebody first started writing about Saint Nemo, which is this. There was this guy named Rodolphus. He writes a life of Saint Nemo about 1290. And it becomes really popular.
Fanfic.
Yeah,
well,
it becomes really popular because he gives it in 1290. Well, he gives it around 1290 to this cardinal who's kind of a big deal, and it becomes kind of famous in Rome and stuff because, like, in 1294, the guy that he gave the life of Saint Nemo to becomes Pope. He becomes Pope Benedict VIII, Boniface VIII. So okay, all right. So we have a medieval life. In fact, we have multiple. Then there's a bunch that gets a bunch of lives written about Saint Nemo. So there's a medieval lives, multiple of them. We know the author is kind of clear, so that's not mysterious. That's good. We have a pope who loves the saint and loves the saint's lives. We have the saint described like all through the Bible. So why am I proposing this as a fake saint? Because the word Nemo in Latin means no one.
Holy crap.
So all of those, what the author in 1290, what this guy Rodolphus did, was he just found all the places in the scriptures where it says no one does X, and he strings together this series of quotations. So it says no one fights for God, you know. It says that God closes and no one opens, right? If God destroys, no one builds up. No one has ascended into heaven.
Holy crap.
It's the best. Now, here's the best thing about Saint Nemo is that So this is all proposed. This is like classic medieval hijinks, you know? The guy who becomes Boniface VIII loves this because it is hilarious. I was just rereading passages of this before the podcast started, and I am sitting here in my room and I'm literally laughing out loud. It's so funny. But at the same time, and this is why it's important to propose in this context, it is all proposed in the genre of a saint story, right? Saint Nemo and all this kind of stuff. Okay, and it becomes really popular. Like in Rome, people love it. They're telling all these jokes. They're telling all these different versions of the story because there's a lot of places in the Bible where it uses the word nobody, right? So this totally obvious joke text about the life of Saint Nemo, ends up provoking from this like Roman curial official who does apparently not have a sense of humor named Stephen of St. George. He writes this like 30-page long denunciation and refutation of the life of Saint Nemo. And he says, this is heretical and there is no such person, which of course you realize now he's saying like, there is no such nobody. Nobody is nobody. Nobody has never existed.
But he literally Alice in Wonderland crap.
Didn't get that. No, exactly. This is exactly. It's like, who's on first? Who's on second? Is it Saint Nemo? Does Nemo not exist? But nobody doesn't exist. Somebody has to exist. I lay Saint Nemo before you.
So just be clear, because I thought you were going to be saying that this was a fanfic when I said this is a fanfic, but you're actually saying no. Rudolphus was in on the joke when he wrote this. He was basically writing like a sort of comedy satire version of the genre that had become Saint books. And he was like, what if I did one for this obvious Saint no name? Pope thinks it's funny. He likes it. He gets it as a gift. And then this random guy with a stick up his butt goes, this isn't funny at all. I cancel this book.
Yeah, basically like, and I'd say satire only in the sense of like, it's such a well-known, again, not to mock or not to criticize, but it's such a well-known genre that everyone knows the rules and everyone knows what it's like, its conventions. And so it turns out because it's a highly conventional genre and everyone knows them, that's in a really ripe context for parody, where you can just have a ton of fun with this.
Well, like a Hallmark Christmas movie now. Like it's so consistent. And it's so like by the numbers that it's just a fun and easy thing to be able to parody.
Yeah, exactly. So there is no malice anywhere here. There is no like mistrust of the cult of the saints. It's just like basically this really clever guy having fun with the Latin text of the Bible. And then and everyone thinking it's hilarious, and it kind of going, so to speak, viral, except for then, yeah, exactly. You have like one kind of dogmatic dude who's like, this is not, dear sir, this is not, excuse me, this is dangerous. This is not funny.
Medieval clerical Karen just freaking
out. It's a man Karen. It's a man Karen from the early 14th century. Yeah,
Father
exactly.
Karen of St. George.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
This. Wait, okay, so then you were pranking us before when you said he's all over the Bible, because probably any Bible Kyle and I have ever read it actually just translates it correctly as no one does the thing, right? And that's why I haven't read Saint Nemo before, or am I actually dumb?
If you had read it in Latin, you would have read it all over the place.
You freaking gaslighted us.
I did not gaslight you. I said I told you something true.
You said it's all. I said I've never heard of him, and you said, "Oh, it's all over the Bible."
It is all over the Bible. Excuse me.
They call that lying by omission.
Did you ask what language we were reading the Bible in? No, you did not.
Oh my God!
Lying by omission.
You leprechaun.
You might want to Google that.
You leprechaun. You absolute deceiver.
Literally, nobody lies by omission. See what I did there?
Just in spite of Father Gabriel, this saint is poo-poo. I hate this saint. He sucks. Jacob, your turn.
I gotta say, if I were voting though, I would honestly just give this to. I would give the whole thing to Saint Nemo without and bring up any others, because he's so obviously fake, and like in a funny way, and like his name literally means fake, and I love this so much. Oh God,
I'm the
yeah, but I'm not. But I'm not the
my
judge.
Choice.
You're the judge. It's your choice. Girl's choice. Girl's choice.
It's my choice. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. This is the Sadie Hawkins dance of a podcast.
No. I'll hear it out. I'll hear out.
All right, cool.
I haven't made my choice yet, but this whole gaslighting thing, Father Gabriel.
It's difficult. I know it's difficult. It's sensitive. It's sensitive. Yeah.
This is toxic.
If you need to talk through your emotions, I know a good psychotherapist.
You know an okay psychotherapist. All right. So let's go modern. Also a saint who is very explicitly meant to be fake. And also meant to be a parody of saint devotion. Let's talk about Saint Urho. Urho, spelled U-R-H-O. So there's this guy in, I want to say like, I think this is in the 1950s. Yes, 1956. Okay, so there's this guy, Richard Mattson. He's a Finnish American guy living in I think Minnesota. Yeah, in Minnesota. And he works at this little department store called Catola's. And he is like, he's like pathologically jealous of all the Irish people. And the fact that they get to have St. Patrick's Day and like celebrate St. Patrick's Day every year. And he's like, man, this sucks. These freaking Irish people, they like get everything, which has never ever been said before about Irish people. So he decides, you know what we need? We need a Finnish pride saint the day before St. Patrick's Day, so that we can steal the thunder of this. We can have our own parade. We can drink green beer the day before them. And by the time they get to St. Patrick's Day, everyone will be bored with this and they won't have it anymore. And so freaking funny, especially funny because there is a real patron saint of Finland. There is a real historically existing, theologically existing patron saint of Finland, an answer to St. Patrick by the Finns. His name is Saint Henry. He's like the first bishop of Finland, and he does.
He's not cool enough.
He does predate.
No clout.
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't have enough clout. So he does predate St. Patrick's Day. He's on January 19th, right? So
but too far away though. Yeah, too far.
But they want their own invention. So they come up with this Paul Bunyan looking dude. Like all carved out of wood, and they come up with this truly insane character where, you know, okay, St. Patrick, he drove the snakes out of Ireland. So what can St. Urho have done? What can he do? I know. He drove the grasshoppers out of Finland.
Had they previously been there in abundance?
Apparently they have a big wine culture in Finland, and they were like, he had to chase away these giant grasshoppers so that we could have our nice tasty Finnish wine. And they have a song that they wrote in both Finnish and English. And it goes like this: Uksi Kuksi Columba V 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Saint Urho is the boy for me. He chased out the hoppers as big as birds. Never before have I heard those words. He really told bugs of green. Bravest Finn I've ever seen. Some celebrate for Saint Pat and his snakes, but Urko Pokaboy got what it takes. He got strong and tall from Villy Sour, which I think is sour milk soup. I love that combination of words. Yeah. Right. And
milk soup. Give me some of that.
And ate kalamajaka, which is fish soup, every hour.
Sour fish soup?
Right. Well, that's why this guy could chase those beetles, what grew as thick as jack pine needles. So let's give a cheer in our bestest way on the 16th of March. St. Patrick's Day is 17th of March, St. Urho's Day. So this is an actual carol. Surprise, this does not really take off.
Wait, what? What?
Right. It is not like still I think the town that does it, and listener, if you happen to live in Virginia, Minnesota, like let us know if you guys actually do stuff for this. I guess
send us pictures.
Right. I guess there's a statue of St. Urho in Monaga, Minnesota. It's carved out of a piece of wood with a chainsaw. And then there was
did he use the chainsaw to drive away? Oh, no, wait.
Yeah, he used the chainsaw to chase away the grasshoppers.
Wait, okay,
sure.
Was it carved with the chainsaw?
He was carved holding his chainsaw. That's Freddy Krueger. That's different. It's a whole other thing.
Statue's holding an axe. Statue was carved with a chainsaw.
And then why wouldn't they carve it with an axe if that doesn't make sense?
It's really hard. But then there's this 2001 book that is also, this is why this is my answer to Nemo. That is also a parody of like kitschy, comforting to your grandma saint fiction called The Legend of Saint Urho by Joanna Sala. And it presents all this folklore as actual history and describes the sacred birth of Saint Urho when God chose him to chase out the grasshoppers. It's so funny to me that someone would be this jealous of St. Patrick's Day, and then rather than look and say, what authentically Catholic traditions do we Finnish people have? Just makes up one in whole cloth in this seedy, just passive-aggressive way to undermine this Irish Pride Festival. I love it so much.
I mean, I love that the song actually already jabs at St. Patrick. It's like,
100%.
Don't you be celebrating that garbage St. Patrick. Be celebrating my saint. Be celebrating my guy.
Yeah, amazing.
I also like the kind of like savage dig there on the Finns, though, because recognizing that this is a completely fictional person is characterized as the bravest Finn I've ever seen.
Right.
Which kind of suggests that Finns are a bunch of like girly men.
Right. Well, because most Finns would be scared of grasshoppers, but this guy wasn't.
This guy was not. I mean, because he had divine power,
right.
know.
And so therefore he stands out among all Finnish people because he wasn't scared of grasshoppers like the rest of us.
I mean, grasshoppers are kind of spooky, to be honest.
I mean, they're like in the
scary.
grass and then they hop, which is, I confess,
that was one
eerie.
of the plagues was locust, actually.
That's true.
I don't know if you've read the Bible, because I actually have.
Nemo
locust was
has read the
big
Bible.
Problem.
Locusts were a big problem.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
What do you think, Kyle? We have two parodies of saint fiction here. One medieval, one modern and dumb. Which do you think is moving on to our next round?
Well, as scary as grasshoppers and locusts are, snakes are a little more scary.
Definitely.
But does my hatred for Father Gabriel right?
Dang. Noble listener, beware of gaslighting. Beware of gaslighting Kyle, It's dangerous.
Doesn't let
I've been hurt before, Father.
Yeah. He's been burned.
Don't hurt me again.
Has Nemo hurt you?
Yeah.
Last St. Urho's Day, he gave you his heart, but the very next day, you gave it away.
I gotta give it to I mean, I have absolutely, I've done none of my calculations, so there's no way to again go over stats, hand size, height,
right?
Anything that you would normally pick, for drafts. But I think just based on the storytelling alone of Saint Nemo.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I gotta give it to him.
You presented that so well, Father Gabriel.
Yeah, Saint Nemo in the house.
There were twists. That was
just kidding. Actually, that saint is real, and I lied. I actually love him, and I hate grasshoppers, and I picked that saint. I don't remember his name.
You don't even remember the saint.
I pick him.
Yeah, you can't vote for a saint if you don't remember its name. So you're saying round 2 is Nemo, right?
Actually, that Saint Nemo was really cool. Actually, I really like that saint. I'm glad that he made the draft.
I'm so glad. I'm feeling highs and lows right now, but I'm just gonna stick with highs and we're gonna go.
Yeah. See, Father Gabriel might have gaslit you, but you're whiplashing him. You're doing that narcissist thing of love bombing. You're like, yes, I choose your saint. No, I don't actually. And you're really abusing him emotionally, honestly. And I got to call you out for that. That's not okay, buddy. Hashtag Kyle is over party. Hashtag cancel Kyle.
Hashtag Nemo cancels Kyle.
I like this. Okay,
it works with literally everything. It works all the time.
It does. No one cancels Kyle. I love it so much.
This is my point.
All right. So far we got Saint Batman and Saint Nemo. This is rounding it to be very pop culture heavy. I love it. Father Gabriel, give us your third.
I thought you were going to go through all.
Oh, no. I'm saying, Father Gabriel, give us your third. We got to jump through this. We got to get through this. We got to pace ourselves. Give us your third, buddy.
My man.
Okay.
Sorry.
My number 3. Saint Armano Pungalupo. So,
What?
okay, we've moved forward in time to a time when people have last names.
Wait.
Saint Poopalupu?
Pungalupo.
So
Kyle couldn't literally a minute later remember the name Urho, and you're gonna throw Poopalupa.
It's like Armano. It's like Herman, but it's Italian.
Saint
Armano. Think like Armani. He's like Armani. Okay, think like Armani. This is Armano.
All right. Say
Armani is just multiple Armano, you know.
All right.
So his name's Armano. I'm not going to repeat his last name. I don't want to trigger you. I'm sorry. You know,
Let's
trigger
say his
warning.
last name again.
Punkalupo.
Poopaloopy doopy.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
My
Okay.
two
Good.
favorite singers are
Can
Dua
I make fun of
Lipa.
that name since it's not real?
Hey, this is a real person. Watch
Never mind.
out. So,
Are
so
you trolling again?
So here's the thing. This is a real person. This person really existed. He died in 1269. He lived in Ferrara in Italy, which is kind of between Bologna and Venice, and it's in sort of northeastern Italy-ish. So one thing that's important to know. So he dies. Everyone in the town where he dies kind of knows that he's very holy, and they revere him as a saint, and he's sort of buried in a prominent place, and they go and they're praying to him and all these kinds of things. Eventually people write a big letter to the Pope about why he's great, and like they allegedly they say there's all these miracles that he's done, and they talk about his virtues and stuff. Okay, fine. You know, like exactly. Dear Mr. Pope Gregory the Ninth. How do you say ninth in Latin again? Ninth. Anyway, so they're doing that, and okay, so everything's fine. One small problem. At the time period, there's this big thing that has been growing since like the middle of the 12th century and had just hit this huge explosion called Catharism, like the Cathars, which was this. It was the biggest, hottest heresy ever to hit Western Europe. Honestly, so like, it had this really stark idea that the body and the material world is like literally evil, like evil, literally evil, and that only the spirit is good, and that there are these like particular people who are the chosen ones, the pure ones, who like literally by eating certain foods, like digest in their body and release particles of light that have been particles of spirit that have been imprisoned in the evil prison of matter.
Oh, this is some Scientology crap.
It's actually very there's a lot of Scientology here, in fact, where Scientology has a lot of this, in fact. So there's all this stuff. It sounds mercifully, it sounds pretty silly to us right now, but this was a really, really, really big deal. It took over a lot of southern France and then a lot of northern Italy. The Dominicans actually, in a very real way, were founded to like combat this heresy. And the fact that you never heard of them, just saying.
Job well done.
Job well done. High five, guys.
Heat up those steaks, boys. We're having a grill.
Having some grills. So this was a really big deal, and it's a really seriously evil thing. People would starve themselves to death. People would like all this kind of. It was like this was a really dangerous, like no kidding around, very evil kind of thing that was very big. Okay, so Armano, sometime pretty shortly after he's died, a Dominican inquisitor comes onto the scene and is like, and just, you know,
everyone,
it's like,
everyone just imagine Father Gabriel in like a big metal, like Be Gone Thought style Templar helmet for the.
I would appreciate that, actually. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna stay short though. I feel that adds to the threateningness.
Yeah, but we'll put you on a cartoonishly large horse.
Thank you. Small but mighty. Yes, exactly. Right. That would be great. Okay, so this Dominican whose name, this is hilarious. This is his real name. This is one word, Aldobrandinus. He shows up and he starts like talking around a little bit about Armano. And he's like, guys, that's so cool. Tell me about this like new holy saint you've got around here. And they're like, oh my gosh, Armano, he's the best, you know. They're talking about this and like he did these things and like, oh my gosh, you know. He's like, that's cool. Listen, he was a Cathar.
That's bad.
Aldobrandinos finds out that he lived and died a Cathar. He always was.
Full on starve yourself. I'm full of magic light. Hardcore evil heretic guy.
100%. Literally all of the above. Like the body is evil. my body produces like magical light particles, sets spirit free from body, like genuinely like this whole evil thing. This is how he lived and he died.
Right.
Okay. So the Inquisitor, when he shows that this is in fact the case, that he was always a Cathar, the town is like, nuh-uh though. Yeah, but just no. Just no. And it's in that context that this group of priests actually write to the Pope, and they're just like, oh my gosh, he's saying he's talking so much smack about Saint Armano, but like, listen, he's this incredibly holy thing. But it's incredible because they literally just basically like copy paste. They pull up Google. It's like an assignment that you give to like a college freshman. It's like, write a life of Saint Armano, which is, at like 3 a.m. They just like put Google, and they're just like, what makes a saint a saint? And they're like, he was good to people, and he healed somebody, and then like, my mom lost her cat and he found her. It's like at that level of like totally made up, but they're trying to be really earnest about it because they really think he's a saint, And
they're like, yeah, he's definitely saying we just got to find saintly things to attribute to him so we can convince the Pope that he is this
that
saint,
despite the fact that he was this like really serious heretic who rejected all the teachings of Christianity. Like, they don't believe that Christ had a body. They don't believe that Christ was God. I mean, like they reject literally everything about Christianity.
You were kind enough to sort of I'm often the one who is reminding us that like, hey, we have like non-Catholic listeners to this podcast. We have to sort of round off our bases. And you actually did it this time at the beginning of the episode where you actually, before we defined fake saints, you actually defined real saints. And I appreciate that. But I want to really put a fine point on this, that like there is this stereotypical idea that heretics are just anyone who disagrees with Catholicism. And that's who we label people we disagree with. But like heresies, in fact, have extremely torturous, horrifying practical outcomes, like people intentionally sort of sacramentalizing anorexia and starving themselves to death, right? So these are actual, real threats to society and mental health and spirituality and all these things, and they just happen to come with this philosophy that's completely gonzo banana pants.
Yeah, basically so. So like, and this is really a big deal. Listen, it takes more than 30 years to convince somebody to take this seriously. It's Aldobrandinus dies before he can convince he spends like 20 years trying to convince the Pope that this guy is like not only a fake saint, but that he's actually like a bad dude. And he dies before like he can get it through. This is why I say like the church is actually really, 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 really cautious in investigating these things, both in saying yes and in saying no. It's not until 1301, right? So that's 32 years after this guy dies and starts being revered as a saint, that finally Boniface VIII, the guy from St. Nemo, actually the same guy, gives Aldobrandinus' successor permission to like officially declare that this guy is not a saint. And now you do need to know this is the very beginning of the 14th century, and the way that you declare that somebody's officially not a saint is you don't just like put a bunch of notices around town, because that's not going to work. So they exhumed him, burned his body, and scattered his ashes. As one does, as one does.
I love the medieval thing of like, we need to cancel this person, so let's remove them. Like, isn't there a pope that they exhumed his body and then put the dead body on trial, and like an altar attendant puppeted his skeleton like from behind so he could defend himself. Yeah, they were like, we need to give the guy a fair shake, so let's exhume him and just use his body as a puppet. And
we got to put him on trial. Yeah, they put him on trial, exactly. Yeah,
and then let's convict him for being a heretic, because at least then he can say his piece when we use his body as a puppet. I love that the medievals just needed to do this. It's so charming and crazy and ghoulish.
And the intention, the amazing thing here too, is that like this is a person who like had denied the reality of the body, denied the existence of the body, the goodness of the body, all these kinds of things. And ultimately the punishment, I mean, it's not a punishment for him. It's it's a warning to other people not to take him seriously as a saint, is to destroy his body.
Oh, wow, that's really
just pretty wild, right?
Right. Yeah. If you lived your whole life denying the body, like, we need to make a witness out of this by not
symbolically enacting the thing that he actually believed. So in fact, it's like literally an example of like what Christians mean by like by hell. In fact, is not that God looks down and is like, I hate you. You said mean things to your grandmother once when you were 5, and so you go to hell. It's that like, no, you just kind of get what you want. You know, and like in a weird, and I'm not saying this man is in hell, you know, maybe God have mercy on him, but like, but there is this is a dramatically literal symbolic enactment of the way in which like he spent his life believing that the body was not good and strictly evil and should just be discarded and thrown away as garbage. And so, people having been misled by him, they enact that on his body.
So this is totally side note, but I'm obsessed with Roald Dahl, who's the author, like wrote Willy Wonka and all those great, like very dark British children's stories. And
very dark, yeah.
And Taika Waititi, who is, you know, a filmmaker who I love. Father Gabriel and I were recently talking about this off air. Netflix bought the rights to every single Roald Dahl book.
What?
And, is creating an interconnected Roald Dahl universe, and Taika Waititi is going to direct the entire thing. So there's like rumors that what's his name from Jurassic Park? What's his name? Jeff Goldblum is going to be the new Willy Wonka and all kinds of different things like this. So it's going to be crazy. But because of my excitement for this, because I actually found out about this, everybody knows, big theme park fan, Theme Park Insider released that Netflix actually wants to create a Roald Dahl theme park.
Whoa,
which is going to be insane. Really cool. And you can actually go inside the Peach and James and the Giant Peach, and you can go inside the chocolate factory. It'll be insane. But as I was reading through this, it was causing me to like revisit a lot of the Roald Dahl stuff. And he has these extremely ghoulish, poetic ways of punishing his characters. Like, I mean, take Willy Wonka, you know, it's like, oh, you know, she blew bubblegum too much, so now she's going to become bubblegum. Like this kid only watched TV, so now he's going to go die inside a TV. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so kind of literal. And I feel like this is a long way around to saying, I feel like that was the church's response to this, was just like, what's the most poetic justice, almost too on the nose way we can declare this guy a heretic?
Oh yeah. For Boniface VIII, there is no such thing as too on the nose. This is kind of
no
his jam.
Subtlety with this guy, and I love it. I'm here for it.
For having such an Oompa Loompa-ish name, I can't think of a more fitting way to dispose of his body.
Oh yeah, you're right. We went full circle here because we started saying he was Saint Oompa Loompa, and we ended by saying he was killed Willy Wonka style.
Oompa Loompa, Toopity-doo.
Toopity,
We spread your ashes because that's what you want.
Okay, listen, I'm going to make sure that you get hired to write songs for this new series. This is important.
Yes. Do you mean the new Willy Wonka series, or do you mean the Saint Hermano series that you are going to personally produce, Father Gabriel?
Also possibly that, yeah. Produce, write, direct, star, co-star.
You're going to Tommy Wiseau this. You're just like, hello, I am Saint Hermano, cool American guy.
Hello.
I did not hit her. I did not. Oh my God. We started off referencing Anna Delvey. Now we're doing Tommy Wiseau. There's a whole kind of subtle undercurrent of modern fraudsters here as well. Wow. I really like that. I think I have the perfect response to this though. So my third in my category is probably my favorite of all of these. He was the first fake saint that I was aware of. Okay. Let me open this story for you this way. Picture a young Jakey. He's a chubby little nugget. He's sad. He hasn't got any friends because all the little scroops on his street pick on him for reading Harry Potter because he's going to go to hell for reading Harry Potter. He's going to go to hell for reading Harry Potter, they say. And I should read Lord of the Rings instead, which I still have not done because I'm completely defined by my trauma.
I can't fathom a world where you get made fun of for for reading Harry Potter.
No, I've now lived through two different versions of cancellation of Harry Potter, because when I was a kid, conservatives said I shouldn't read it because it was satanic, and now that I'm an adult, liberals say I shouldn't read it because J.K. Rowling is a trans exclusionary radical feminist. So we live in a world that has
becomes
very
full circle
subtle
in a
and
disturbing
nuanced
way. Yeah,
right. Yeah, very disturbing way. We live in a world, guys, that has very nuanced and rational, calm responses to children's books. Anyway, so I'm very, very picked on. I'm going to go to hell for reading Harry Potter, and I'm reading through it, and I love it because I'm a little kid. I don't know that it's really poorly written yet, and I'm kind of processing. And then what happens? The characters go to a magical place that validates that this can't be satanic, because the wizards must actually be Christian, not just because they celebrate Christmas, but also because the wizarding hospital is St. Mungo's hospital for magical maladies and injuries. Cue me simultaneously being very, very validated, and also going, who is this Saint Mungo?
Who is Saint Mungo, though? Google's real quick.
Right. And is this a real saint? Is this a fake saint? Turns out the answer is yes. So there is this thing, mostly in and probably this is in other countries, Father Gabriel, you'd have to correct me, but it seems to me especially prevalent in Wales and parts of Scotland, where they're sort of England, but the church doesn't maybe have kind of the same reach, and they're super, super folkloric in the Middle Ages. And so they have these saints, but and there's definitely historical evidence that this person existed. It's not sort of oh, maybe a person existed and we just apply this name to him. There's definitely historical evidence that most of these Welsh saints with these crazy long names that you can't pronounce probably did exist, but almost everything we know about them, short of where they were born and where they died and where they built their church, are entirely fabricated using the tropes of traditional Scotch-Irish folklore. Okay. And there's literally 500 examples. I mean, there's so many of these people, and they're some of my favorite saints because they're always the ones who I slew a dragon by giving him apples. There's this
dragons
one,
ate apples.
Right. There's this one, and I'll bring her up in the Easter Bunny episode that I inevitably want to do, maybe not this year, but another year, where she's this amazing saint who, kind of the classic trope of I'm a princess, kind of like Thecla, where she's I'm a princess, and
Thecla's okay.
Right. I've now memorized it as that, and I can't get it out of my head. But sort of like this, where she's this princess, and she's, I don't want to be a princess. I want to be free. I want to be a nun. So she takes off all her clothes and becomes a naked wild nun in the forest and lives there. And all of the forest animals love her. And this becomes a proto Snow White, where she just lives in the forest and she's super hot, supposedly. And she's naked, and she just feeds animals out of her hands and prays the rosary 24/7 and meditates on the face of Christ. And then this super hot prince is riding on a rabbit hunt through the forest. And all the rabbits are scared of him. So they run up to her for protection. And he ends up finding her because he's following the rabbits. And he goes, holy smokes, this girl is the hottest girl ever. And he tells her I will do anything for you because you're so freaking hot. She says, I want you to build me a church. And so he builds her a convent just because he has to make good in his word. And she gets hundreds of women, according to folklore, who all are in loveless marriages, who don't like their lot in life, to come and become nuns in her order. And so it's this very proto-feminist kind of Snow White thing. And probably she existed. I mean, her convent is there. It's been named after her since the beginning and all this stuff. But how much of that is folklore? How much of that is not? Well, Saint Mungo is this on steroids. Saint Mungo is the coolest thing. So
hold on. So this is Saint Mungo Harry Potter.
Yes.
Universe. All right.
Right.
All right.
So Saint Mungo did ostensibly exist. Okay.
Outside of the Harry Potter universe.
Outside of the Harry Potter universe, he did. Historically ostensibly exist. So I'm trying to find where exactly he is. Yes, so he is in Wales, and Mungo can also be supposedly Mungo is the Welsh, but the kind of traditional name is also Kentigern. That's supposedly what his baptismal name is. So you can call him Mungo or Kentigern. And he primarily is known to have worked in Scotland. Hogwarts in the Harry Potter series is basically set in Scotland. And so, Scottish spirituality, J.K. Rowling is a Scottish Presbyterian. So Scottish medieval spirituality is very, very, very heavily represented in the Harry Potter novels. And there are a lot of little churches and actual hospitals in Scotland, apparently, named for St. Mungo. But beyond the cultural applications, you can make a very compelling argument that this guy does, at least by the folklore associated with him, fit in very, very, very nicely with the Harry Potter series for a couple of reasons. Okay, so we're going to go in order of the reasons that I think are coolest. So there is historical evidence that he and a guy called Saint Columba, who was sort of considered the St. Patrick of Scotland and who was a real person, were very close friends. And there's historical evidence that they met shortly before St. Mungo died, probably of stomach cancer, and that they actually exchanged croziers out of their respect for each other's ministries. They'd never met. They'd been pen pals. They exchange croziers and then go in their separate ways. And Mungo maybe dies a couple months later. All right. So, but St. Columba, again, is one of these saints that totally real, but a lot of folklore is applied, including the very first medieval reference or the very first historical reference at all to the Loch Ness Monster is assigned to St. Columba, where St. Columba's crossing Loch Ness. Loch Ness Monster tries to jump out and eat one of his altar boys, monk servants, one of his little people.
Yeah, don't do that. That's not cool.
And that's not cool. He raises the crucifix and banishes the Loch Ness Monster. And that's the first time we have any reference to a creature looking like what we traditionally think of the Loch Ness Monster is looking like, referenced in anything, anywhere, right? So most Loch Ness Monster legends actually date back to this apocryphal story of St. Columba. So that's the first thing that's very Harry Potterish about St. Mungo. He's really tight pen pals with St. Columba, the Loch Ness Monster saint. Second thing about St. Mungo that's very, very Harry Potterish. There is an old Welsh poem that describes the 4 miracles for which he's known. And it is the most pagan sing-song, dance around the maypole thing I have ever heard in Catholicism. It goes like this. Here is the bird that never flew. Here is the tree what never grew. Here is the bell that never rang. Here is the fish that never swam.
Swang,
right? And
the fish
and these are the 4 miracles, and they're not miracles. There's almost nothing spiritual about these things. They're very much old Welsh kind of kooky lady who lives on top of the mountain giving you folk cures kinds of things, right? So the first is Mungo is a little boy in school, and his classmates, who are all bullies, they throw a rock at a robin and kill it. And out of his sensitivity, he resurrects the robin. So that's the first thing. Here is the bird that never flew. Then there's that Mungo has been left in charge of the fire in the monastery, the fire in the fireplace, keeping it going, because this is something that happens before electric heat. You got to assign someone to keep the fire going all the time. And he falls asleep because he's a young kid. He's kind of lazy, kind of cheeky feller. Falls asleep. But it's okay, because he magically / with grace just lights the fire again.
Casts fire. Wait a second. Does he say a Harry Potter word like Illumino or something?
Right. Yeah. Does he horribly butcher and mispronounce Latin in order to cast fire? Who knows? Lost to history. But he does supposedly
lost to history.
Cast this fire.
The Scottish were really good at Latin, so he probably had good Latin.
Right. Well, fair enough. The bell which is referenced in the poem. That's the next thing. The bell that never rang is thought to have been brought by St. Mungo when he visited Rome. That probably didn't actually happen. But he brings this bell to Rome that had never been used, basically, and he brings it, so it never rang. And this is this great gift for which he's known. Not really a miracle, but just one of the things in his poem. And then the fourth one is this classic You see this as a fairy tale motif that occurs over and over again. It obviously is an homage to an actual miracle of Christ that happens in the Gospels. But basically, there's this queen who is suspected of cheating on her husband. Her husband suspects her of cheating on him. So he demands to see her ring, which he assumes she's given to her guy on the side. But it turns out he's actually trying to frame her so he can like go off and marry some other chick. He's just trying to frame her for infidelity so he can get a divorce. And he has actually thrown the ring into the river so that when he asks her, well, if you're not cheating on me, show me your ring. She can't produce it because he's thrown it into the river. She gets sentenced to execution so that he can go marry some, itty bitty. And she appeals to her confessor, Saint Mungo, who then miraculously catches the fish and guts it and finds the ring inside.
Does this happen in the Chamber of Secrets? Because it kind of sounds like it does.
Right. It really could, right? Like, again, when you begin to understand that J.K. Rowling is Scottish Presbyterian, and you begin to understand like these Scottish like folkloric faith motifs that are happening, you realize there are allusions to this, unintentional and intentional, all over the Harry Potter books. They're very richly based in Scottish Catholic and Protestant folklore, pre-Protestant folklore. And again, this fish one especially is a motif that occurs in fairy tales all the time. I mean, obviously, we have this story in the Gospels where Christ, sends Peter catches the fish, finds the coins inside the fish, and it's just exactly the amount they need. But then you see this happening all the time, magic ring, found inside a fish to pay off the king, to pay off the dowry, to prove your innocence. Sometimes they talk to the fish, right? This is a very, very, very common motif. And one of the first times it appears folklorically is attributed to St. Mungo. So that's the second thing. That little poem of the miracles is the second thing that makes him really, really Harry Potterish. But here's where it totally cinches it and becomes the most Harry Potterish thing you've ever heard. Mungo. So you have to understand, side note, the book that we consider King Arthur is really a collection of fan fictions written over several centuries, right? Like, we start off with the central idea of who King Arthur is, and then different generations add other characters, other knights of the round table that they want. So it sort of fills out his gang as more and more people add their own 2 cents. Merlin is a relatively late addition. But the wizard Merlin, who is referenced constantly in Harry Potter, and there's even an order of Merlin, and he's this very respected sort of figure whose shadow is over the whole Harry Potter series. Merlin does have folklore about him not relating to King Arthur, going all the way back to pre-Christian Middle Ages. And there's some belief that he was a historical figure that then gets retconned into the Arthurian legend later on. Mungo battles Merlin.
What?
There's this very, very, very famous section for anybody who knows about Mungo at all. So there's this 15th century manuscript, which is generally referred to as Lalakin and Kentigern. So Kentigern, again, is Mungo's sort of considered baptismal name. Mungo goes into battle against Merlin, who in this is referred to as Lalakin or Lalakin. And Mungo comes up on top, conquers Merlin.
Mungo.
Merlin is this really interesting figure, side note again, where he is, if anybody's ever seen the movies or read the comics of Hellboy, right? You'll be very familiar with, basically, Hellboy is a modern version of Merlin, where Merlin is supposedly, in the folklore, he's born and meant to be the Antichrist, and then his mom baptizes him, so she claims him for Christ. So he has all the powers of a prince of hell, but is a good person. And then he gives his life to the priesthood and becomes what's known as the mad monk or the mad prophet, and is this kooky sort of like half mystic, half priest, half confessor, half wizard that accompanies Arthur on all his adventures. And Lalakin / Merlin is referred to even back then as this mad wandering monk who wears giant reeds on his head and casts spells, but is also technically Christian. And so Mungo basically defeats this guy in battle, ostensibly before before Merlin converts, maybe. So super crazy. Again, there is historical evidence that this person existed, that this person mattered, that this person did found an abbey, that this person did convert a lot of people in this part of Scotland. And yet everything associated with him is crazy Harry Potter folkloric mumbo jumbo to the degree that he battles Merlin and finds a magic ring inside a fish. And I just love this so much, both because of the implications for the Harry Potter universe, that there are these, Christian monks having magic in the world, and also just the fact that this is actually a canonically real saint with so much of his stuff being totally fairy tale-ish. That was probably a longer pitch than I needed, but I just love him so much.
That like bizarrely in all of this gets like that just I'm sure by complete accident from Rowling gets picked up and inserted into these books, in this totally like random sort of way. Just because if you pick a real, this is a funny thing about Harry Potter is that like if you pick a real medieval sounding name, it probably is gonna be a saint. Like you probably we probably don't know it, but if it's actually a real name that like sounds kind of funny because we don't use it anymore because it's so medieval, it probably is a real person and it's probably a saint. Like there is
she does, to her credit, she refers to the hospital as Saint Mungo's Hospital, right? So he's a saint even within the world of Harry Potter. And who knows, she could have known some of this in theory. I mean, again, there are lots of parishes, both Presbyterian and Catholic, dedicated to his name, and his folklore, especially the Merlin stuff, is there. So it's possible that she could have known this. But again, I just love it.
So I'm gonna have to give it to Mr. Mungo.
Whoa, that fast? Are you serious? Come on.
I think so. I think
Pokey Lupo.
I think Saint
Purple Nurple.
Saint Purple Nurple.
Humpty Dumpty, come on, man.
He wasn't even, all right, so this was a real person.
Was it Mungo? I mean, Mungo was arguably question mark real?
Could be.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's a fake saint battle, so that's the hard thing, right?
I know.
There was a person maybe sort of called Mungo,
right? Is
any of the things that are being claimed? Is he the wizard in Harry Potter? Certainly not. Almost certainly not. I mean, maybe he fought a historical Merlin. I would love to believe that's true.
I think that's the most historically credible single piece of his story.
Right,
is that he fought Merlin. I think that seems that seems credible.
Yeah, that's on his Tinder profile. It's like brought a fish back to life, fought Merlin, entrepreneur.
Mentioned in Harry Potter by name, NBD.
Also, big fan of The Office. Big fan.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sticking with Mr. Mungo.
Okay. Explain why.
I love the idea. I mean, the story is just incredible. I mean, you can't beat that. That's yeah. You mentioned this was maybe your favorite saint on your list.
Yes,
it's pretty badass. So yeah, I'm leaning towards him. Just
and now we can all convince our Christian parents that Harry Potter is holy to read because Mom, it's got a saint in it, so it's fine.
It's got a real saint. And by the way, he battled Merlin. Actually, maybe you shouldn't press on the whole battling Merlin thing, because doesn't that technically sort of suggest that like if he's a saint and he fought Merlin and defeated him, then doesn't an order named after Merlin be like an order named after the devil?
Yeah, but you're also assuming that Christian moms think really deeply about these things, which I don't think the kinds of Christian moms we're talking about, generally speaking, do. There are Christian moms listening who are not like that, but the stereotypical capital C Christian, capital M mom, TM, does not think that deeply about what we're talking about.
Struggles all around.
I don't want to bash my parents, but they didn't even know that she was Christian. J.K. Rowling. Christian.
I don't think most people do.
Yeah. They just assumed she was a witch.
A witch?
Yeah.
She
practiced a witchcraft.
But I love that, like, I mean, there are a lot of people who hate Twilight, us included, and
I like it.
Rightfully. Oh, okay, fair enough. But no one would think that Stephenie Meyer was a vampire. Like, it's insane to think that just because you wrote about something necessarily you are that thing. I don't understand. I mean, that could get us into a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we got to talk about created things.
I'm baffled by this. Yeah, actually, no,
hysteria.
You're right. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, thank you. No, you're right to remind me of the created things, the title of this podcast, because we've been talking a long time, and we have gotten through 3 rounds of Saints here. We got one more round to go, and then we're going to figure out who the best one is. But that means we're basically, looking at the end of the tunnel here. So that means it's about time to give a shout out to our proud patron, Catholic Creatives and Catholic.store. We are, of course, the podcast Creative Things, brought to you by Catholic Creatives and Catholic.store. Catholic Creatives, for its part, is an organization dedicated to igniting a new renaissance of faith, as it were, through prayer, beauty, and the creative spirit. And to do this, they connect and support and promote artists, innovators, makers, and storytellers across the faith. But it takes a community to bring these ideas to life, right? So by supporting our Patreon, the Patreon for this podcast, you not only help us on this podcast to bring in awesome guests and to keep doing what we're doing, but you also contribute directly to future workshops, summits, and just general resources meant to support Catholic artists around the country, while getting an inside track on these activities with access to our member-only Facebook group. So to join, we encourage you to visit catholiccreatives.org/support. And in addition, you can support us another way by going and checking out some of those beautiful products that are for sale, created by Catholic Creatives makers, artisans, and other artists. And those can be found at Catholic.store. Don't give your money to the man, to big tech conglomerates, or any of those kinds of things. Support independent artists, support Catholic artists locally by shopping at Catholic.store today. All right, so I'm liking this so far. Back to the topic at hand. I'm liking this because I won round 1 with Saint Batman, and then you won round 2, Father Gabriel, with Saint Nemo.
Rightly,
and I just
justly,
won
yes.
with Saint Mungo.
Yeah, which was unjust. I dispute.
Right.
Right. I tried to push the ref, but he turned out to be in a different room in a different city, and it didn't really work. So I just hurt myself, which is fine. But I hold resentment very deeply.
Yeah, well, it's okay. I mean, again, we're Catholic. That's
yeah. It all seems kind of par for the course,
It's on brand.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, good. It's on point.
They were just airing out all our religious trauma here.
Well, here's the thing: if someone's listened to this point in the podcast, like they've gotten so far through 6 fake saints, so if they've gotten this far, they're ready for us to just put all our dirty laundry on the lawn.
They're probably
absolutely.
They probably want to lay them out. They're probably in the comments like, "Oh yeah, my mom hated Harry Potter too." Oh, yeah.
Why is he like the deepest Texan? Why is our one listener the deepest possible Texan?
Hey, there are great people from Texas who listen to our podcast. Okay.
A lot of
there are actually.
there.
In fact, it seems like kind of maybe the majority of our listenership is probably in Texas, but that's another story. So that leads us to round 4 and the final round before we decide who is the winner of all of these things. So drum roll. Father Gabriel,
I bring to you for your consideration Saint Javelin. Okay. So Saint Javelin, female saint.
Okay.
Recognized most distinctly by iconography. So it's a veiled woman in a green garment that sort of drapes her whole person in a physically sort of half-seated in a pose with her torso sort of bent over slightly, or head slightly inclined in a pose that will be very familiar to anybody who's seen various icons of like the compassionate or merciful mother of the Virgin, for the Virgin Mary. Most especially distinct, like the visual representation is most especially just reminiscent of the Virgin Mary, but it could be reminiscent of other female saints as well. So large green garment sort of covering draping her. She has a blue halo, which is distinctive that the halo itself is blue. And then on either side of her slightly cocked head are two descending stylized doves in yellow.
So far, this sounds like really traditional imagery.
Yeah, some of the colorations are a little bit distinct. Again, there's something distinctive about this saint because this is represented primarily by iconography for reasons that will eventually become clear. On the face, there's this very strong, distinctive look of mercy and compassion that again seems to be harkening back to some of these particular traditional icon styles of depicting the merciful mother. There is a little bit of dispute about whether the figure is primarily supposed to be representing Mary Magdalene or whether it's primarily supposed to be representing Mary, the mother of Jesus. If it is supposed to be representing Mary Magdalene, it would be very unconventional iconography, kind of from top to bottom. It's more like traditional iconography for Mary, the mother of Jesus, particularly again as like compassionate and a little bit sorrowful. So far, so pretty much normal. Just very standard kind of iconography. Some very slight alterations of the coloration, which when you're, which stand out nonetheless, but still it's mostly just coloration alterations. Until you get to the point where in these images of the sorrowful mother or the compassionate mother, often the tilt of the head and the sort of half-seated position is because she has the Christ child in her lap in one position or another. And often the tilt of the head is actually to press her cheek against his or to press her head against his. This is what lends this very distinctive and very intimate feel to the image. So Saint Javelin has all of that, only what's on her lap is a rocket launcher.
Oh Hell my
yeah,
God,
brother! Hell yeah!
So that's exactly it. Yeah. So it's just exactly what it sounds like. So it's this image of what is really a sort of and suddenly everything becomes clear, right? Because the blue halo with the yellow descending doves, the descending stylized doves are the Ukrainian a Ukrainian national symbol, and they are yellow, and the halo is blue. So the halo around the figure itself represents the Ukrainian flag, and the rocket launcher that she holds is the Javelin rocket launcher. It's the name of a rocket launcher, many of which come from the States. I don't know 100% if it's an American-made rocket launcher or not. I'm afraid my knowledge of the different species and breeds of rocket launchers is not quite as excellent as it perhaps could be. But
not as much as your medievalism.
Yeah, sadly, I know, but we have to pick expertise, and that's just not mine.
Right.
It is so the image is hot off the press. Actually, I decided I would bring this in as my fourth saint, just in case, on the very off chance I didn't see this coming, that maybe I would be like down 1 to 2. I didn't see this coming, but I thought maybe just on the off chance if I were, I'd come in with a very different kind of fake saint, which was my first 3 were these very old kind of medievally, early Christian and then medievally ones. But this one is hot off the presses. So Saint Javelin is about at the time of recording, about 3 weeks old, less actually, about 2 weeks old. Because so the Saint Javelin image is just an image. There's no story, there's no narrative, there's no biography. It's just an image. It was made by Canadian artist Christian Boris as an immediate kind of response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That he proposed, sort of incorporating these ideas about like Eastern Christianity, iconography with the defense of Ukraine, with the way in which particularly like rocket launchers are playing this incredibly large part in Ukrainians defending their independence against the invasion, and then also like these rocket launchers being given to Ukraine by other countries, among other things. So he made this image very, very quickly. It appeared to be basically his first reaction to the invasion of Ukraine. And he just calls the image Saint Javelin, Protector of Ukraine. And that's it. On his website, there's no explanation of the image. There's no nothing. There's no story. There's no, unlike our other fake saints, there is no imagined backstory. He does not, like our Finnish Saint Patrick, he does not give Saint Javelin like an imagined backstory. He doesn't invent a person to populate this image. It's just this sort of pastiche image of like the mother of Jesus as a compassionate and sorrowful mother, cradling a rocket launcher. Christian Boris had a pre-existing relationship with Ukraine and with Ukraine war relief specifically. So he had done various things for a long time, working with a war relief charity that's actually quite beautiful, like looking to give education to war orphans, and then like counseling and therapy and healing and stuff for veterans with PTSD and these kinds of things. I think it was originally associated with the 2014 invasion of Crimea and other things like that. But he said that originally he had designed the image just hoping to make $500 that he could donate to this charity, because he realized how absolutely critical particularly the work of this charity was going to be going forward. In 2 weeks it's made over $650,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wait, so like merch? Like
merch.
Like how is it made?
Merch.
So they were just buying like t-shirts and
yeah, there's at this point there's everything. Like I found out about this shortly after it went live, and like every day it like quadruples, the amount of merch and everything that's available. So it's pretty astounding. I mean, there's direct donation possibilities as well. So I don't know what proportion of this is from merch and what proportion of it is direct donation, but presumably most of it's from merch. So yeah, but this is the thing. So this is it's about a 2-week-old Fate Saint with no backstory, no history, and no nothing. That has a really distinctive visual iconography that is like the one thing the Virgin Mary basically never has under any circumstances ever, which is a weapon.
Right.
And not just any weapon, but a rocket launcher. So,
well, if you're going to have, if after, 2000 years of iconographic tradition, Mary's going to break habit and get a weapon, like you could do worse.
Yeah. It's like, launcher. here's what I'm going to do, hon. I'm just going to grab rocket launcher.
I was going to say, this might not be a funny enough story for me to even ask about, but I'm just curious, when you say you found out about it almost as soon as it went live, that implies to me someone very urgently texted you about it.
That is exactly what happened. Yes. Yes. Somebody immediately and very urgently knew this was something that I needed to know. As I'm like,
so I was like, oh my gosh, there's a fake saint. This is either wonderful or terrible. Father Gabriel needs to know about it right now.
Yes, that is like basically exactly what happened. Yes, in fact. So basically immediately after this went public, one of my friends was scouring the internet for me in a free and totally unpaid manner, and was like, oh my gosh, you have to see this. This is insane. And here it is,
I'm curious what your thoughts are, Kyle. I'm like, on the one hand, obviously it's great that they're raising money for people who are victims here. On the other hand, there's such a rich Christian tradition in Ukraine of all these amazing saints. And as you point out, Father Gabriel, this really rich, iconographical tradition. And it makes me kind of bummed out in the same way that it kind of did with Urho, frankly, like when I was saying that if you're going to choose a Finnish saint, why not go with, actual Saint Henry, patron saint of Finland? It kind of bums me out that it's not like one of these Ukrainian saints who are real pray for. I don't know. I'm struggling with my feeling on this because it's obviously such a good thing, but it's obviously like such a sad, almost, I don't want to say betrayal, it's too strong a word, but like a cop out almost of a real tradition. I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
Well, first, this is kind of unrelated. I did want to ask this. You mentioned that there's never images of Mary holding a saint. I'm recalling
Holding a weapon.
Holding a weapon. There's like an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and sometimes there's like a knife involved. Am I like remembering that wrong?
So you're thinking of specifically, and this was something that we just sort of chose off air to not get into. You're thinking specifically of drug cartel reinterpretations of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Yes, yeah. That's okay. That would explain. I've never seen that, but okay.
Yeah. So the iconography of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which we want to do like a series on almost because it's so amazing, but never, ever includes a weapon unless it has been taken. And there are many, many fake saints with a whole different tapestry and vibe that we're not going to get into this episode that are specifically related to cartel Catholicism. Okay. And that deserves its own exploration. But that's what you're referencing. Yeah.
I was searching because I've been discerning whether I want like another tattoo, and Our Lady of Guadalupe has been up there just because her story is incredible. And when I search Our Lady of Guadalupe imagery on the internet, you get like a dagger.
You get a lot of
like,
oh man. I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, so there is the whole a dagger will pierce her heart thing. So which is why I thought I actually balked when you said that Mary is never depicted with a weapon, because I can't think of any specific examples, but I really thought that there were images where a dagger was actually piercing her heart in
where she's being pierced by a sword, sure, but wielding a weapon, that's different, you know.
Okay, so that's
her being pierced by a dagger, pierced by a sword. There's like the Seven Sorrows visual tradition where there'll be like 7 little daggers around her heart and these kinds of things. That stuff is common.
One for each of the dwarves. One for each of the dwarves.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's the sleepy one's the worst. But that's the idea exactly, that she's never seen wielding or using a weapon of her own, or even really holding one. So I would not go down the realm of getting a tattoo from a cartel tradition. I'm just going to say, because they kind of worship the actual devil. I mean, just put it out there. But
although I will say,
well, this is why I haven't gotten the tattoo either, because it's just
that's
like
right.
so much
research.
So much history.
It's like getting Japanese character tattoos. Like, P.S. Basically don't do it unless you ask me first, and then I'll tell you won't.
The late night comedian John Oliver has started doing this bit that I want to rip off and claim as my own, but I won't. Where he just randomly will do ad reads for the Semolina cartel.
Oh my gosh.
And they're like absolutely not sponsoring it. They're like, if you want the best quality cocaine on the market, you cannot do better than the Semolina cartel. And it's so funny. And I feel like we just bordered into that story where it's just like, if you want saint iconography, you cannot do better than the Semolina cartel.
Oh my god.
No, but back to what we're saying here. I mean, what do you think of that dichotomy that I'm talking about?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I get what you're saying. It kind of borders on maybe doing a bad thing to like create good or to like fuel good, but also, you know, a saint that's in support of the defense of Ukraine makes sense right now. So it's, I don't know. I don't know anything about the artist or his intentions or why he did that. I kind of agree it would be cool if they used a real saint, but without, you know, immediately knowing the backstory. I mean, my thoughts go to, it could be, you know, why not use a real saint? But I don't know.
Yeah, you know, I honestly, I've struggled with it a lot because, like, you know, like most people, you know, I've just been watching the invasion of Ukraine with sort of horror and, you know, offering masses nearly every day and, you know, praying for all this and all these, you know, just everything I possibly can do. And like everybody else, like wanting to do more, like wanting to believe that there's anything that I could do to help, you know, like real friends, like my Dominican brothers and sisters, you know, like these people I know, you know, who are in Ukraine and all. And I get it. And as you say, like and so I would never criticize. I mean, and there's this beautiful that there's all this support going into this, what seems like a really good charity. That's beautiful. But I do find the thing like really, it raises a lot of flags for me, because like,
and not just Ukrainian ones,
and not just Ukrainian flags. Well, actually, the fact that it raises the Ukrainian flag is already a little bit of a difficulty, because like, so on a couple of levels. So one is that I think we have to be saints who are local to places are a really important part of Christian history, but the appropriation of a saint for like national causes can become really sort of troublesome. So like saints,
right, that's where the whole like
get like
killing in the name of religion and stuff like that's where that starts to happen.
Because like saints don't get draped in national colors, like they really don't. I mean, not in their iconography. Like if you have a statue, then you might drape it with a flag or a bunting or something like that on a national celebration. I get that, that's great, but like in their iconography, no, right? And then in the end, like I sort of feel like that there's this deep kind of dig in this image that like that the real salvation comes from the rocket launcher, you know, and that there's a kind of like kitsch pastiche force to it that's a little bit like those, like, you know, you can find these photographs on the internet. They'll always go around on like cheap calendars, you know, from like the mall calendar store of like a bunch of nuns holding rifles, you know, where it's like the attraction to the image is this like weird contrast between like apparently religious associated women and then like extreme violence. And like in the end, the woman, because she's not a real woman, like Mother of Mercy has been replaced with like bearer of violence. And even like
and Christ literally has been replaced by a
rocket launcher, you know, exactly. So like it's
which is the biggest, like it's not just Mary like holding baby Jesus and in one hand is a rocket launcher, which would be also weird and kind of bad, but would be a really interesting thing to discuss. But it's literally we swapped out Jesus for a rocket launcher, which is provocative in exactly the wrong way.
Yeah. And I just feel like, no, I think that's right. And I feel like in the end, you know, the success of this thing, which again, like I'm grateful for, like I'm, you know, but the success of the thing is because it's not a religious image. It has a sort of like a patina of a feeling of a religious image. So it's this sort of like nod to the fact that Ukraine is this profoundly richly Catholic country with this profoundly rich iconographic tradition that's very distinctively Ukrainian.
Shame on you for using that word so easily when I've struggled to say it like 5 times so far.
Once you get to things like iconographical tradition, then it's all over, you know. But yeah. So you get that. So in the end, like the woman in the figure is just kind of like a visual cipher for Ukraine, but bypassing what the figure actually, like where the figure actually gets its force. Like the figure gets its force because it's the Virgin Mary. But in this image, the figure is just a cipher for like, oh, Ukrainian national artistic style. And then like, and then of course we get the Ukrainian colors. And then we have like the thing that's motivating us right now, which is our desire for the defense of Ukraine, which I'm with you on 100%. Absolutely. But it just does seem a little bit too much kind of like the actually motivating force here is like, denatured, like once religious imagery transformed into a kind of a parody.
You're using a lot of big words to explain something that I think can be summarized pretty simply in terms of this is religious cultural appropriation. I mean, even though it's well-intentioned religious cultural appropriation, and even though I think we would all agree, especially as, you know, kind of artists the term cultural appropriation is used probably way too often and too flippantly without too core of a definition. I mean, this is what that is, right? It's taking all the imagery and trappings of a deeply held thing, a thing that is deeply held by a given culture, stripping it of its meaning completely, and pirating it for something else. And in this case, we're all grateful that the use is really beautiful. Like the something else is actually really quite decent. And I think that's where the internal conflict comes from. But ultimately, all these words that you're using to describe the problems you have with this come down, I think, to basic issues with the phenomenon of cultural appropriation. This is just religious appropriation.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's not a strong category of thought in my mind, but I see what you mean. I see what you mean. I think that's helpful. The interesting thing is that, like, I mean, as far as kind of postmodern cultural constructions, like deconstructions and reconstructions go, I mean, I think that kind of stuff can be really interesting.
Sure. Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's obviously, and so the tough thing is just as if we've turned the thing so completely on its face that like the whole structure of value that makes the thing have its actual visual force has been like inverted and pulled apart, then I think that there is a problem here, and that might be what, and that's me trying to put in my own words. I think what you're getting at with the cultural appropriation point, which is that like this has actually kind of turned the thing completely backwards over and around itself, and it's no longer recognizable.
Well, I mean, so when we were when I was in grad school for art, I took my favorite class of all of them was this class on package design. And I would love to do like a couple episodes on package design because it's such a cool thing. Yeah. But we had to design, packaging for different products, including like the final project was to basically invent a brand from scratch and then design all the, like in real life, physically build out all the products for it. And I designed a pasta brand that I called Spaghetti Western, and it was all like cowboy themed pastas, and like a little cowboy using like spaghetti as a lasso. And I was very, very proud of it. But to do this, like I went and I got a pasta box and I deconstructed it and I, drew out all the dimensions and I made a template in Adobe Illustrator and I put everything on that. And then I put it down again and I said, this is a pasta box. And it's like, no, that's not a pasta box. Like what you created is really interesting and cool. Like what I created is really interesting and cool, but it's a final project. It's an art piece. It's not a pasta box. You actually removed the pasta from the pasta box, the original one, and then you made this weird kind of mockery of the pasta box. And look, don't get me wrong, it was a cool mockery. Like I'm proud of that mockery. But so I'm not saying it wasn't art. Obviously what I did was art, but I think on a more existential level, when you get into particularly religious appropriation, there is an emptying from the box, that is to say the imagery, of the pasta that gives it its identity, right? The content, the meaning that actually gives that box its identity, gives it its form. And then like you sort of create something, you say, oh, it's the same. It's not the same. And I think we have to be really clear about that as artists. It might not be wrong to do it, but you at least have to be very, very explicit about it not being the same in order for it to not be wrong. Because there are going to be a lot of people who just infer because it looks similar, therefore it is the same.
It's a fair point. And, and I think it's something to be careful about here too, because, or I should say, maybe I don't want to put it in that frame. Something that a further kind of complicating and interesting factor about this is that while the only image that's clearly coming to my memory of the Virgin Mary engaged directly and personally in an act of violence, visually depicted, because there's a lot of medieval stories about the Virgin Mary, like smiting people and killing people. There's a lot of drama. And once you get to the Crusades,
again, Twilight fan fiction.
Yeah. Once you get to the Crusades, it gets real intense. But there's this amazing marginalia, so just like a little incidental illustration that somebody wrote in the margins of a manuscript, medieval manuscript that one of my friends sort of found or at least popularized. Which is the Virgin Mary punching the devil in the face.
Yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah, just this straight armed like punch in the face. It's the most amazing thing. So the notion that like the Virgin Mary would even, now again, this is a bit of an unicum, a bit of a one-off. Like there's not a gigantic visual tradition of this, but like that I think went really wild over the internet because it was so like, I don't know, like the religious signification of that like carries through, like that is still everything that it was, and I think that's for a number of reasons. One is that she's sort of like punching, and another is that like it's the devil is the direct object, like not analogously speaking, not like, whatever, but like the actual devil, and she's punching the actual devil. And this is like a profession of faith actually in like Mary's incredible love for us and like how that all plays out. And like and so everything works, like it clicks on every level. And even though this isn't like a big broad mode of representation in Christian visual history, like it's still really interesting. Where I just feel like, again, I don't want to, we talk a lot in the podcast about not wanting to be sort of like, just sort of boundary setting or sort of telling, like, no, you've gone too far, or sort of like always criticizing.
The point of this podcast is not to say not to impose sort of a moralism on top of art where we're saying that's bad, so don't do that anymore.
Precisely right. But at the same time, we have to say what we see, and I want to love everything about this image, and I can't. I just can't. Like I haven't bought any of this merchandise. Like I wouldn't put it on my car, all these, not because I don't want to support Ukraine, but because I just don't think that I can actually embrace this level of kind of like pastiche and reappropriation and redeployment of things that I think are valuable, not as formal structures of visual appearance, but valuable as like visual professions of faith.
Yeah. Well, and I, I shouldn't even say this because it would get us off to a different thing, but I'll just keep it like a very small comment. Kyle, you mentioned what we discovered was a cartel image of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Well, we haven't confirmed that.
We haven't actually by the
all right. Well, we
check on that one.
I didn't go get this tattoo last weekend, so
right. Yeah, fair enough. No, you're going to save that to come get another tattoo with me.
It could also, just because there's a dagger in it, maybe it's a holy dagger.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. But regardless, you did at least inadvertently. There's no way that's the case. But I'm just going to say anyway.
I did not get a tattoo.
I know you did. But what am I trying to say here? You're distracting me now. No, I think okay. So with the cartel thing, like the connection here that there actually is like when fake saints go bad, right? No, when kind of when this trend in art or culture turns sour, it's always because of this. Whether we're talking about cartel Catholicism or whether we're talking about Saint Javelin, or to a certain extent, it's a silly extent, but to a certain extent, Saint Urho, right? The Finnish saint that I already mentioned, right? This goes dark when you remove the spirituality from the figure and replace it with anything, but especially when you replace it with violence and or patriotism. Like the second you empty a saint of their meaning and say, I can just throw in gung-ho my country and also bombs and blood, you've got something inherently satanic at that point. Because you just can't separate out violence from a satanic thing. Like you just can't. And no matter how well intentioned it is, I think if we're gonna put any kind of moralistic boundary or safety or bowling bumper on this topic, it would probably have to be that, I think, is don't rip a saint of its meaning and replace it with violence and nationalistic pride.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And again, and this is even this is the Ukrainians have a just and moral right to defend themselves and use violence in the means that they do to defend their country, and their independence. And so that's not putting anything weird against that. It's just that you would just think like suddenly we have changed what is one weird trick to change the nature of my saint image? Like, well, once I've taken out any Christian referent and I've replaced it with violence, I have achieved my one weird trick, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, what's your contender, man? What's your contender? We can talk about this all day, but what's your contender?
We could. It literally could not be less of a match. I've been really trying every time you mention a saint to like reorganize my fake saints to sort of be a point for point juxtaposition. We just explored something really, really deep, and I'm about to pose the most shallow, stupid, aimless possible example from my whole list, but I do love it. I'm trying to think of the best way to do it. Okay. So have either of you ever been to a Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah. All my associations with Chuck E. Cheese as a kid were that like, this is where rich kids have birthday parties, which I think tells you everything that you need to know.
Oh, wow. That does tell me a lot. Kyle, did you ever go to a Chuck E. Cheese growing up or no?
Yeah.
Why do you sound so depressed about this?
I had a birthday at Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh my gosh, you were a rich kid.
I was
a rich kid.
That's
Tear
where
down
rich
the tall
kids have
trees,
birthday
defeat the
parties.
proletariat. defeat the capitalists. We are the proletariat. We're gonna destroy you now. Okay, so everyone knows Chuck E. Cheese, the rat / after the 2000s mouse. Who is the mascot character?
Okay, he switched species.
Yeah, they rebranded as a mouse because like mice are less gross than rats, I guess.
Yeah, unarguably true. Yeah.
So everyone knows this character. What fewer people know is that this character has an in-company children's book styled Bible of sorts of information about the character that you are supposed to know if you play the character, even though you don't speak to anyone when you play the character. Short version is this. Chuck E. Cheese is actually short for Charles Entertainment Cheese. That's his full name. He was an orphan. And because he was an orphan, he didn't know his birthday. This is all in this book. You can look this up. There's a whole version of this uploaded to Issue. You can literally like swipe through it. But because he was an orphan, he didn't know his birthday. And he was very, very, very sad about not having a birthday. He was also a very, very good singer. And so one day he won a singing competition at the orphanage where he lived. And he won enough money to get a bus ticket to New York. And he goes to New York and he meets Pasquale, owner of Pasquale's Pizza, which is another Chuck E. Cheese character. And also a whole weird capitalist thing where now Chuck E. Cheese is like pretending to be an adult business on like Uber Eats and stuff to take money away from actual small businesses by just rebranding themselves Pasquale's Pizza. So if you like order from Pasquale's Pizza, you'll just get pizza from Chuck E. Cheese and you don't know. So anyway, it's that Pasquale, not a highly business ethicked man, and he decides to hire this orphan mouse to sing at his restaurant to drum up crowds. And
thank God child labor laws don't apply to orphans, by the way. Like
mice or
mice. Yeah.
Haven't you seen Stuart Little?
Yeah. So anyway, so he hires this orphan rat mouse to come and perform in front of a crowd. Crowd comes up. It's Chucky's opening night. He's so nervous. He cacks the note. Everyone gets so angry. They start like throwing things at him, like tomatoes and garbage, and they're screaming obscenities at him, like a really, measured normal reaction to a baby mouse messing up a singing note. And they all leave. But as they're all leaving, he sees one little child crying, I guess because his singing was so bad or something. And that reminds him of all the tears he shed being an orphan and not knowing his birthday. And so he decides to start singing. He's just spontaneously moved by ostensibly the spirit to start singing the happy birthday song.
Whose birthday is it? It's nobody's birthday.
It's nobody's birthday, but he just deeply, like, he would sing the happy birthday song, I guess, to himself to comfort himself for not knowing when his birthday was. Like, this is a deep.
He sings out of deep trauma.
Brokenness.
Yeah,
right. So he starts singing out of his deep trauma. Again, this is all part of the official lore of the restaurant.
Yeah, this is all reasonable.
Starts singing happy birthday of his trauma, and slowly the audience comes back in and they sit in awe of Chucky's beautiful voice. And
this is a Doofenshmirtz, like Phineas and Ferb, Doofenshmirtz backstory.
Right, this is really unnecessarily dark and convoluted. So this is why even now Chuck E. Cheese is all about having your birthday there, right? Because Chuck E. wanted to make sure that every child got to celebrate their birthday since he never had one. And they serve Pasquale's pizza. So all of the things that you did not have questions about, they have answers for.
Now I have a lot more questions, though, is the problem. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to run out at some point, and I think I'm going to still have more questions. This
is that terrible, like, postmodern writing thing that they keep doing where they give origin stories to characters in order to answer questions that we don't have questions. Like when they did the Solo movie and we had to find out how he got his dice and how he got his last name because everyone was, like, wondering, I guess.
It's like, wow, happened. Those dice, though. Wow. I mean, I loved how they were in one movie and then not in the other two. And then, like, wow, but they needed a story.
He's called Han Solo because he was by himself. That's crazy.
Oh my gosh. If he'd been with somebody else, he would have been Han +1. Which is incredible.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, this is for Chuck E. Cheese what that was. Why am I bringing this up in a Fake Saints episode? For literally no other reason than that this character, who is very obviously in his origins based on like a Frank Sinatra wise guy, Italian singer type, was raised by the good and loving nuns at the Saint Marinara orphanage.
Oh my gosh.
And my submission for my fourth fake saint is Saint Marinara, who is given, thankfully, no information in this thing.
I was going to say, where's Saint Marinara's backstory?
No backstory, but Saint Javelin didn't have a backstory, so it's fine.
True. Actually, there's a match. You see, there's a match. It's more of a match
there
than
we
you thought.
go. Exactly. But so I did try to research as much as I could about Saint Marinara. Maybe they had other internal stuff. Maybe they didn't. So there's only one article that I could find that wasn't directly related to commenting on the total, complete batshit insanity of the story that I just told you. And that article was, I guess, an atheist pathos blog talking about how Saint Marinara is the pirate patron saint of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, which is that like annoying parody religion.
Oh yeah,
that's on the internet and stuff. They present no evidence for this. I'm pretty sure that they were just like doing a riff on the Chuck E. Cheese thing.
I'm sure.
So
yeah,
I can't find anything else. But so here's what I do love about the Saint Marinara thing. We're talking a lot about cultural Catholicism in this episode. Ultimately, like this really is coming down to a conversation about cultural Catholicism, whether it's the medieval cultural Catholicism of seeing saints as a genre of feel-good novels. So I'm going to write my own parody one about Saint Nemo, or whether we're talking about the celebration of Saint Urho, or we're talking about Saint Javelin. A lot of fake saint stuff does come down to parody within a culture where Catholicism has been widely proliferated. And I think Saint Marinara, despite having no background or even a gender, is a really, really good example of this, almost to a microcosmic degree, because basically to invent a character like Charles Entertainment Cheese, who is a who is a pest, I can't say with a straight face, who is a pastiche of a Frank Sinatra or a Dean Martin, any of those guys. You kind of can't separate out Catholicism from this sort of Italian American wise guy experience. So they have to end up putting it in there. They just it wouldn't be nearly as charming or as funny if you didn't put that in there, because
if you didn't put Saint Marinara's orphanage in there.
Right. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't feel, I mean, it's weird to call it authentic, but it wouldn't feel authentic to that stereotype, that cliche, that trope, whatever you want to call it, unless there was some aspect of cultural Catholicism there. And so that's why I kind of end with this one. It's just that I think that's interesting because it gets right to the heart of, because it has no identity, because Saint Marinera has no identity, no background. It's literally just a pun, and a bad one at that. I think it does illustrate something fundamental about these, which is that they do stem from a reprocessing and a repackaging and a effort to understand, often from the outside, a given culture's experience of faith, whether that is a Canadian doing a depiction of the trappings of Ukrainian faith, or whether that's like a deeply Americanized guy with no sense of faith doing what he imagines a parallel of St. Patrick would be, or whether that's, corporate writers coming up with an insane backstory for their rat mouse. Like, I don't know. I feel like this actually weirdly gets to the heart of the subject matter in a way that maybe the others, for all their detail, can't. Am I kidding myself?
No, I think, yeah. Because you're right. It's sort of, this is like, it's reduced to its absolute essence of like, what is the bare minimum that we can use to express that, like, this is a religiously orphanagey kind of a thing. It's like, well, like, why is it even there? Like, well, it's because like everyone is going to associate like, a child raised in an orphanage, like you want that to have a kind of like, you don't want it to be like a state-run institution that doesn't have any romance to it. So you want it to be like,
because then you get Miss Hannigan, right?
Who's that?
From Annie. I forget. You wanted. Side note: Father Gabriel wanted to do an episode on all musicals, and I as a theater kid, was like, "Are you an idiot? We have to do individual musicals," and that hadn't even occurred to him. Yes, it's Annie. It's the villain in the musical Annie. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. Annie, it's the worst. See, this is why I have thoughts, but this is why we just do everything. Let's just do everything. We're like, yeah, no, that sucks. We propose something. I'll be like, no, it'll be great. But yeah, so it has to. So we don't want to be institutional, and then we want it to have some kind of relational thing, and so there's going to be like, the church runs orphanages, but then they have like saint names, but like nobody knows what saints are. So like, but it's got to sound Italian because exactly right, like as you were saying. So like, it's got to sound Italian, so it'll be Saint Marinera because that's a thing. One thing I love about that, of course,
also because weirdly, Chuck E. Cheese does still consider itself primarily a pizza restaurant. Like they recently, like in the last 5 years, were like, we're going to be getting rid of a lot of the games. We're going to make it a space where kids can sort of play freely while adults study and get work done and enjoy
get work done at Charles Entertainment Cheese.
Right. And the only common factor between this and old Chuck E. Cheese is the terrible pizza, which means that they actually think part of their corporate identity, like a major part, is not the games or the animatronics, but the pizza, which is, just in case any execs from Chuck E. Cheese are listening to this right now, that's not what we all value or think about when we consider your brand at all.
There's the rolly thing where you put the balls in the holes. That's what it's about. That's what it's about.
That's what it's about. That begins and ends there.
That's amazing. Saint Marina does have this very particular angle that I really love, though, which is the like misplaced anthropomorphism, where like this happens a lot. It's sort of like all these sort of half thought out stories and like advertising stuff like this, because this is proposed as Saint Marinera. This is selling pizza. You eat it. You eat it. This is proposing that you eat Saint Marinera.
Oh, but then we can get into...
No, this is just some goober who was working there, and he's like, the dumb boss is like, I need you to write up a story about Chucky Entertainment Cheese.
Well, exactly. This is what I mean.
And he's like, what? He's at Norris, like, okay, so it would be, I don't know, Saint Marinera.
It sounds Italian. Italian.
Yeah, it's fine. And that's where it came from. It's not some like...
You're assuming, though, Father Gabriel, that when you say anthropomorphism and branding, you're talking about like when Tim the Tuna sells the cans of tuna.
That's exactly what I mean. That's exactly what I mean.
Saint Marinera is a pizza.
That's what I mean. Is that Saint Marinera? Well, he's the pizza. He's the sauce in the pizza. No, I'm exactly thinking about like the tuna fish selling the cans of tuna fish. It's like, I escaped. I'm selling these suckers though.
I don't think so. I think it's just a guy who has the last name Saint Marinara.
Maybe the sauce is named for him.
Hey, maybe
he's also a mouse.
Maybe it was Stacy Marinara. Okay, but we just call her by her last name. You know?
That's true too. All I'm saying is, Chuck E. Cheese Company, Charles Entertainment Cheese Holdings, if you're listening, stop being cowards. We want a Saint Marinara animatronic.
Yes.
We don't care if it's a pizza. We don't care if it's a rat. We don't care if it's a man or a woman. We just care that it is an animatronic Saint Marinara, like praying in the corner. Like, probably shouldn't participate in the actual shows. Should just be like muttering hymns in like the far corner of the bar, really creeping everybody out. Even if you get rid of all the other games and animatronics, I think we need this, and we're going to sue you if you don't.
All above. Okay, it's to you, Kyle.
Well, I wanted to say too, if that's the case, that it is a pizza. Saint Marinara is a pizza. Part of the backstory should be very dark. Maybe Saint Purple Nurple-esque, named a saint, but actually was not a saint. And then
wow, that's the dark version. It turns out Saint Marinara is actually like
and then
a very bad person.
Yeah, the orphanage was created in sort of a falsehood,
like a darkest timeline.
Yeah,
dark. Wow, look at you. You just managed to make Charles Entertainment Cheese's backstory even darker and weirder. Good for you.
Yeah, they subscribe to the Pepperoni heresy.
There's a we have the flying spaghetti monster. We need a fake religion in Chuck E. Cheese world. So like in Chuck E. Cheese world, God is the fake God, and flying spaghetti monster is
so in Chuck E. Cheese world,
yeah,
you're saying that the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is not
it's
not
canon.
A parody religion. It's the actual one true religion. There is actually spaghetti.
Yeah, and then they're like, you pray to God? Okay, whatever, dude. Loser.
Wow, this is the way to like introduce children to like religious pluralism and religious autocracy at the same time. Like, I kind of dig this.
Who would have thought
they need
just from one line in an internal memo children's book we could deduce all of this?
Each Chuck E. Cheese needs like a Jungle Gyms like theater that just gives you the lore of this. Well,
so
who
Jungle
else does
Gyms,
that?
For all the listeners who are not from Cincinnati, Jungle Gyms is a immersive themed grocery store where the entrance
it's the world's best grocery store. Yeah,
it has the entrance is a small movie theater where, to understand the apparently high concept nature of this themed grocery store, you go and you sit and watch the Jungle Gym story starring Jungle Jim.
And like kind of like Epcot, where the
it is nothing like Epcot. You shut your mouth.
100% like
Epcot. The Epcot ball, whatever the ride is in there.
Spaceship Earth.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. How it
you're comparing the Jungle Gym's pre-show to Spaceship Earth. Mm-hmm. This is heresy. I don't care about Catharism or Pepperonism. This is heresy.
Hey, listen, Jacob, you're outnumbered 2-1. No, it's okay. It's fine. It's great. It's great. It's great.
All right.
I know somebody else who is outnumbered. A little guy I like to call Jesus Christ. Maybe you know. Dun, dun, dun. I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine.
All right.
Jesus Christ.
I got to pick now. Okay.
You do.
Yeah, you do.
So, I had this kind of, I don't know, maybe a bit of an epiphany, and I think you touched on this, Father Gabriel. It could be like the saint was created in hopes to recognize that there's sort of a right to defend ourselves. This could not be necessarily an attack. This could be a way to defend against the attacks on Ukraine, or to signify or to show that, wow, like this Christian nation has to get up in arms. And the reason I felt that way was because of the image you brought up of Mary punching Satan in the face, which, dude, Is that reverent in any way, or is that also?
I think it is. I think it is, and it wasn't. Again, it wasn't meant to be like a. This wasn't meant to be an attack or whatever. No, that was meant reverently. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, with the whimsical reverence of Saint Nemo, frankly,
right. I would like to think it's the whimsical reverence of this entire show. Like, we aim to be very irreverent, but in a deeply reverent way. Or, whimsically reverent, I think is another good way to put it. I've not heard you refer to it that way before, Father Gabriel, but I like that. So yeah, I mean, sincere, and insofar as it's sincere, reverent, but silly, let's say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I struggle with that. I'd really, really be curious to know the artist's interpretation. And I know that art usually it's what, the crowds think. We give art meaning, but I'd be interested just to see, what he thinks of it. Maybe he doesn't have an opinion, and
it'd be a crazy interview to do, actually.
Yeah, if we could, that would be really cool. But
what this comes down to, Kyle, is, do you think the right to defend yourself is more important than the right to pizza? I mean, really, that's what
I got for pizza, honestly. Yeah, I got for pizza. I will have pizza. It's real good.
It's a gabagool.
Gabagool.
Yeah.
Neither of them have backstory.
I like that. See, this is a good commonality.
Yeah, that was accidental. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta give it to Saint Javelin.
There it is.
So.
Right. There it is.
Wow.
I think for the tie also, because I'm actually feeling a little bit maybe that this would mean something to someone more than Saint Marinara. And also,
I think that is
Chuck E.
absolutely
Cheese
true.
The fact that Chuck E. Cheese is trying to be a speakeasy just makes me not ever want to associate. I'm never going to you want to go to lunch? Let's go to this Chuck E. Cheese place.
Hey,
I heard there's this new place that popped up downtown. I think it's called Chuck E. Cheese. Let's go there for lunch, boss.
Hey, dame. It's 2 a.m. and we can't buy liquor legally anymore because of them prohibitions. Let's go to that speakeasy named Charles Entertainment Cheese.
Next time I'm in town, Kyle, I will take you out to a official taxable business lunch, and I will not tell you where we're going, and I will take you to Chuck E. Cheese, and I will put in my business card for this podcast. We're going to go in ties, silk white scarves, little icons to Saint Marinara. We'll set up a little ofrenda in the corner.
We got to totally fill this corporate dream that they have. We got to have tie, black suits or whatever, go in and we're working and we're talking business mumbo jumbo, and then
numbers, business.
And you want to go to the play place real quick? Yes, as a matter of fact, I would before we head back. We have a meeting at 1.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the clock. We've been at this 2 hours ish. A little more.
Maybe closer to 3. I'm not sure. We might have just beat I Have a Crush on You, to be honest. Which is
we might have. But here's the thing. So the way brackets are supposed to work, and people who actually give a crap about sports who are listening are
they may have been upset all along actually, because we never advanced.
We never really advanced. But we used this metric falsely. So now we have to. It's 2 and 2. Right? I got 2 of mine that Kyle chose. We got 2 of yours, Father Gabriel, that Kyle chose. I won't, for the sake of time, go through each and pair them off 2 by 2 and battle till we find one. But I do think it'd be cool to kind of go through and just sum up this episode by choosing, if we had to, what all of each of our favorite one from the whole roster was. I think that might be a good way to wrap up. So I'll actually start, just to get us rolling. My favorite from everything that was mentioned was Saint Nemo. I thought that was, first of all, your way of telling that story was awesome. You did a perfect job setting that up. You did a perfect job gaslighting us with it and making us think that we might not actually know the Bible that well. forcing Kyle to admit that he actually doesn't know the Bible that well. All of those things.
I will willfully admit that. Yeah. I was even Protestant and didn't read that Bible.
Yeah, didn't read that Bible.
It took me a second.
Your Bible.
The Holy Bible.
Right. But no, I love this Saint Nero idea. I think it's, first of all, I love the idea because there is, Father Gabriel and I were having a conversation off air the other day, which we do sometimes, about like our respective areas of medieval fandom, right? And one of mine is sort of like the culture of the Middle Ages and those vibes. And I think those are often really unfairly depicted, especially kind of in an anti-Catholic way, in your stereotypical Renaissance festival and stuff, where the people are having fun and they're very crass and they're very like, goofy and parodying of things. And then the church over here is very staunch and grumpy and have all the power, right? And there were certainly places where that happened. Anti-clericalism did happen in the Middle Ages and all these sorts of things. But I think there was much more gray area in between those two things of like monks and priests and sisters and saints with really hilarious sense of humor who wanted to take the piss out of the popular culture just as much as anyone else does. And I think that the fact that it would frustrate someone without that sense of humor is so delightful because it really speaks to all of the current insecurities we're feeling about someone like Saint Javelin, right? Maybe we are sort of the modern incarnation of that same, humorless monk who wrote the diatribe that you mentioned. And just the idea of Nemo itself meaning no one or no name or any of those things, like perfectly encapsulates the idea of a fake saint, where like essentially even his name means fake saint. I just love that. I did not know about this before the podcast. I've learned something. And if I had to choose, I would say that's my number one out of the list we wrote down.
Kyle, you want to go?
Yeah, I suppose I can. And I'm still kind of debating. The fact that Saint Mungo could also sort of be real, but I guess that kind of defeats the point.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm struggling with, because it is cool that Saint Mungo has a grain of reality, but the metric we're specifically doing is fake saint. So does the fact that he has a grain of reality completely disqualify him? Maybe I shouldn't have brought him up to begin with.
Well, you're more talking about Saint Mungo in the Harry Potter universe, and that was kind of healing, to be honest. Like hearing about that, I don't know what I'm judging based off of. Again, I joked about like a metric system, but I have none, so I'm just going based off feeling. That's my metric.
Which is a fine metric for a conversation this silly.
Yeah, true.
And in general, I mean, I'm a counselor, so feelings are a fine metric in general.
I just bottle those down.
Shove it down with some brown, boys. Shove it down with some brown.
My therapist has been trying for the longest time. He can't crack me, and he won't.
Yeah. He's not going to unzip me. He's not going to unzip me.
You unzip me, Doc. Oh, you unzip me. Oh. A plastic bag for it. Okay, I'm sorry.
But you're leaning towards Saint Mungo then.
But also, Saint Javelin. My heart has been very heavy with the people of Ukraine. I don't know. I think any support and reaching out in any way is an attempt for something good, and it's really hard to ignore that. And especially with the idea of, this was a homily that my priest gave at the church I attend. That that there's like anger is not necessarily a bad emotion, and we think of the parable of like, or not the parable, the story of Jesus like going into the temple and just tearing out all of the gambling and like we view that sort of as righteous anger, but the way he described it was that like this was not like a whim, like, oh, I'm pissed, okay, I'm gonna go do this. It was thought out. Like he made the whip and he spent time creating that, and it was
right. Jesus went off and fashioned a whip out of cords. Like that takes a bit of time.
That's one of my favorite lines in the gospel. I'm not going to lie.
Yes,
I just love because I love, in fact, specifically thinking about just exactly what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah. So like, anger in that moment was not in any way, shape, or form. Like some people use that as like a way to like show like Jesus was imperfect, and which is just absolutely ridiculous because it says it right there that was this man spent hours, if not, maybe I don't know how long it would take. I've never made a whip. I imagine
you're not just making whips in your office. You're not just sitting there during your lunch break making whips.
Yeah, what the heck?
What a dork! What a loser!
If I wasn't working, I could probably do it.
I bet he doesn't even know how to make a whip. Please,
that's so cringe, bro. That's so cringe that you don't know how to make whips.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the idea of sort of a righteous anger that there's no other thing to do but defend yourself. And cool, I think I got to give it to St. Javelin. I think I do. I think, again, my heart is just so heavy with what's going on there. And again, I think any good is good. I think if it was done with ill intention, that's kind of sad that was what happened. But I think,
but God can still use that.
Yeah, exactly. I think this person was sort of reaching out in a way, and I went on a date and we walked past this, like it was like a witch store, and they had Mary in there, like a statue of Mary, and I was like kind of concerned that they had Mary in there. I'm like, no, Mary's supposed to be there. If the statue of Mary was supposed to be anywhere, it's in this store specifically. She can handle her own. Just
that's badass, man. That's really cool.
So St. Javelin. I'm done. Also, marinara guy you put, he's awesome. I love the pizza sauce. He's so awesome. I love pizza. But St. Javelin's cool.
This is also mostly speakeasy pizza, though. Mostly speakeasy pizza.
I go for the speak. The cocktail hour at Chuck E. Cheese. That's typically what I prefer.
That's amazing. Well, I admit I feel a little bit like like when you're at a restaurant and like the guy right before you orders like the dish that you thought was like so cool. They're like, I'm the only kind of person here who would order this. Then like everybody at the table orders the same thing. You're like, I am the worst. But I confess, like he's mine, so I should try to choose something else, but I can't because Nemo is my favorite. Nemo is just hugely my favorite because, for a lot of reasons. So I really resonate with what you said, Jacob. And part of it is like, spoiler alert, like I am a religious, and so I know it explains his weird clothes.
You swear you can't be Christian?
Oh my gosh, liar! And I think so. Okay, so I was at the I got to see Tosca for the first time the other day, which was delightful, and I was it's an opera by Puccini, and I was at the opera, and this guy came up to me at one of the intermissions, and he started talking, and he's like this, and he's like, well, I was raised Catholic, but I left Christianity because it just seems like a no fun rule, religion of rules and like blah blah blah, and I don't want it, and yeah. And I just thought like that's what a lot of people think, and they see, particularly when they see like a priest or a religious, they think like, oh my gosh, like no fun. They think like, sort of frowning all the time. I don't know, the monks in, is it the Holy Grail? With the Holy Grail, who are like monks of the holy hand grenade who are like whacking themselves on the head, and it's just and it's I can't really usually even explain to people what incredible opportunities for like just like hilarity is involved in this whole process when like you actually can to a surprisingly large degree remove all the like interpersonal stuff of like, do we agree on this and do we agree on that, and like, what about all these principles that like you think are the best and I think are the worst, and like all this kind of stuff. We gotta take away a lot of that stuff and have a lot of shared common opinion, common belief about the things that are the very most important. I mean, obviously we have lots of differences on opinion, those kinds of things, but and then we share a bunch of texts together that like everybody knows. So like everybody knows the Psalter, like everybody knows a lot of the Bible, like everybody knows a bunch of saint stories, everybody knows a bunch of like genres of writing, like saints' lives and these kinds of things. And because of how the human heart works, when you're in a context where everybody knows something and they share a love for the thing that they're pointing towards, one of the ways that people show their love is they start to use that thing to make jokes. And that's just what you do, you know? And so like, this is totally this stuff. This is all over the Middle Ages, is that people will write these like parody psalters and parody masses that like, again, people, they don't understand. They think this is like transgressive, or they think that monks are like making fun of God or something like this. No, it's just that everybody knows it so well that it's just hilarious because you love the thing that it's about. You love that this is a way of worshiping God. You love like even the genre of like saints' lives or whatever, and you love thinking about saints. And then like because we're human beings, like the things that we love the most also necessarily also have all these kind of like silly aspects. And so rather than like turning your face away from the silliness, these just embrace it. And they like allow that to become a part of the way in which we worship Christ as incarnate beings. And I just think it's so beautiful. Like it's such a profound expression of like how completely Christ redeems us that I can't praise it enough, you know? And then also onto the fact that like, you know, this text is written at the end of the 13th century and it is just hilarious to like contemporary sensibilities, you know? Like I spent like a lot of us, I spent a lot of my 20s researching like 18th century Japanese joke books.
Sure, yeah. That's a common rite of passage.
Yeah, I think that's how most people spend their 20s. And let me tell you, like most of those jokes don't work. You know, it is not like they don't work because you translate them to English. I mean, like in modern Japanese, they don't. It's just the humor and everything was so situational and so specific that like most of them are not really particularly funny, except for the ones that are about sex, and then it's just like funny, you know.
To go full circle on how this very conversation started.
Exactly. This is just like hilarious, you know? So
I'm on the episode about sex. I can't wait. I'm Kyle. I have a sense of humor. I'm a wise guy. I like pizza. That's my impression of you, Kyle. I don't know if you could tell.
It's not funny.
But if I could build on what you're saying, Father Gabriel, like, yeah, there is this tremendous camaraderie, but also I think it speaks to, so when I was a little kid, I read this children's book, and I, honest to God, for the life of me, cannot remember what the children's book was or what it was about. I just remember that it included scenes set ostensibly in heaven, and that God was kind of a character. But I do remember the sort of letter from the author that she wrote to kids and parents at the end of the book, and she said, some people might be offended by my depiction of heaven. It was like fields and butterflies and stuff like this instead of clouds, I guess, you know, nothing radical. Some people might be offended, but I am a religious person and I have a personal relationship with God. And therefore, like with all my friends, I joke with him. And I love that. Because what I think people who think religion isn't fun misunderstand is that Christianity isn't primarily supposed to be, as you have often said, Father Gabriel, a religion. It's supposed to primarily, first and foremost, be a relationship with God. And any relationship, married relationship, friend relationship, any healthy relationship is going to have this profound camaraderie and this profound sense of humor. And maybe it's optimistic and idealistic to say, but I really think that Saint Nemo represents this, and then more broadly, the existence of fake saints represents this. The humor implied from that, whether or not the creator knows it, I think implies the kind of sense of humor that we as Catholics should have with our friend Jesus, with our friend God the Father, with our friend the Spirit, right? And I don't know. I like thinking about that way. I mean, even Kyle, to be honest, it's weird to have you here because normally there's sort of this unspoken relationship between Father Gabriel and I where, I'm finding depth in a very, very silly thing, right? And sometimes he does it like with Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but generally speaking, it's me. And I'm feeling like very kind of uncomfortable with the St. Javelin thing, but you're coming in and saying, hey, if there's this intention, like if a good thing is coming out of it, then God is there. I think the same thing is true with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like if there's a good thing coming out of it, like this is something that we can joke about with God and because of our closeness with him. And I just find that really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, again, if the intentions are horrible, you can't do a bad deed. You can't use evil to justify.
You got this, buddy.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
And
no, but I know what you're saying.
No, definitely. Yeah.
And I think I'm glad we had this conversation because again, I was looking forward to this just because it was a silly episode, and of course, knowing us, the silliest episode is now the longest episode we've ever recorded, which just says a lot about who we are as people. But regardless, I hope on some level this inspires our listeners to joke with God. And maybe even delve into, because a lot of these are sort of folk saints, right? Of cultures and things like this. Maybe delve into the fake saints of your culture. Delve in certainly to the real saints of your culture. And in general, go forth and create cool things.
You've been listening to Created Things, a podcast of Catholic creatives, hosted by Father Gabriel Toretta OP and Jacob Flores Popchek, produced by Jessica Flores Popchek and Kyle Weinike. To find out more about how you can support the podcast and other ventures for artists, visit catholiccreatives.org/support.